We never know where life will lead us or what may hinder us along the way. But while every day can feel like one big question mark, it doesn't have to. With the right insights, strategies, and solutions from Western and Southern Financial Group, together we can look ahead to leave the unknown behind.
What's Pro Football Focus doing? Last week they had Brady. This week they got Brady. We're literally doing it differently from everybody else.
As a matter of fact, moving forward from this point on, I will not make reference to PFF.
Do you not understand that they are that way because you're Joe Flacco?
And you just like to discredit things that people deserve credit for.
That you can't possibly be expected to defend that.
Talk about the game, Sam. So who cares about what people think about us?
Yeah, I like football season, all the things that go with it.
Welcome into the PFF NFL podcast. Steve Palazzolo back here with Sam Monson, and we are live on YouTube, and we're going to mock draft. You ready, Sam?
Yeah, let's go.
We've decided to go mock draft. We're gonna work together, you and I. So
That's always a bad starting point.
I know. How long to get through 32 first-round picks?
That's going to take a while.
3 to 6 hours here is my guess.
Longer than the actual draft, probably.
Probably longer than the actual draft. So we'll try to do a little bit of analysis here. And if we're an hour in and only 10 picks are done, we know we're in trouble. But we're going to, our listeners love it when we give every team some love. So that's what we're going to do. Okay. Unless you're picking in the second round. Sorry.
Yeah, then you're done.
Yeah. Don't trade out of the
Next
first round.
podcast or the daily. Head to the daily. That's for you.
The daily is something for anybody. So here we go. We're going to go mock draft, doing it together here. By the way, draft night, draft weekend is going to be pretty epic over at PFF. Stay tuned. We're going to have all sorts of exciting news about the PFF NFL draft show coming up that Thursday, Friday, and Saturday of draft weekend. So we're going to do a mock draft. Everybody try to keep tabs at home. If you're keeping score at home, Jacksonville Jaguars are on the clock, Sam.
Yeah.
Who should we go with here?
No, I can't even think of anything funny. Just Trevor Lawrence, slot it in, move on, next.
What's your fit? Is there any story with Trevor Lawrence that you're just looking forward to seeing? How quickly do you think he can hit the ground running here?
Yeah, I mean, that's really the only thing is how good will he be right off the bat, because there's been a pretty good track record recently of quarterbacks doing very well immediately. There's also been a pretty good track record of, all these toolsy quarterbacks working out quite well. I would say he's both, right? That's why he's the number one overall pick. Even with reasonable competition, Trevor Lawrence is still the guy because he ticks all the boxes. He's great play. He's got all the intangibles. He's got the tools. Therefore, he's the number one overall pick, regardless of challengers. So yeah, I'm just interested to see what it looks like immediately year one for Jacksonville and how quickly he will, or whether there will be any sort of second guessing from people throughout the season. If Zach Wilson has a good game immediately, if it's like, should have gone Zach Wilson. Chris Sims told you he was the next Aaron Rodgers. Or whether it'll just be, no, Trevor Lawrence immediately is amazing, and of course that was the pick.
Yeah, I want to see how Jacksonville builds around him. What is the strategy? They have a lot of holes on defense. They have some offensive talent. Have to shore up the offensive line. So I want to see that. But the Jags do have the draft capital to make some moves here. So love Trevor Lawrence as the number one overall pick. Easy enough. Number 2 overall pick. You and I are picking for the New York Jets. Are we debating? Is there any debate here in the PFF NFL podcast war room about a Penei Sewell, a generational tackle, a wide receiver?
No.
Instead of a quarterback? Are we building around Sam Darnold, or is it next QB?
The debate is which quarterback you're taking, not which other position are you entertaining in favor of quarterback. You're either picking a quarterback or you're trading away to get the hell out of the number 2 overall pick. The debate is not under any circumstance Sewell or Chase or Pitts or anybody else. It's which quarterback do you want, and if you are determined to roll with Sam Darnold, how much can we get for the number 2 overall pick for somebody that wants a quarterback.
In our war room here, on our team, on our Jets team, can we keep Darnold around? I want to keep him around.
We can. I would certainly be listening to the calls that will flood in the second we draft a quarterback.
I'll listen to all calls.
And I would be more interested in taking them than I am rejecting them.
I'll listen to every call.
Okay.
But I want a second rounder or better, and then I would consider keeping Sam around.
I mean, the second anybody throws anything approaching a second rounder, Darnold is out of here.
Is a third round approaching a second rounder?
It is. It's approaching it.
Third rounder, I would think about it. Second rounder, I'm sending Sam out. Anything less than a third, though, I want him as my backup.
I mean, maybe less than a third. I'll hang on for a better offer, but certainly a second, he's the hell out of here.
All right, so we're in the Jets' war room here. Mm-hmm. We going Zach Wilson?
Yeah, I think so.
Number 2 quarterback on the PFF draft board. So we've got Zach Wilson coming off the board to the New York Jets. Trevor Lawrence, number 1. Zach Wilson, number 2. The number 3 pick. Embrace debate here, Sam.
Yeah.
We know we want a quarterback here as we are John Lynch. We're making the move here. We're John Lynch. We're Kyle Shanahan. Which quarterback do you want?
Look, I mean, we said this on the last podcast. I think Justin Fields makes the most sense to the San Francisco 49ers. I think even if you buy into basically all the flaws that people are trying to construct for Justin Fields, I think Kyle Shanahan's offense hides those the best. So even when you look at the flaws that he might potentially have as a prospect, they get minimized within that offense, and what he can do in terms of a positive is maximize within that offense. So even just fit-wise, he makes the most sense there. His upside, ceiling-wise, has to be right there with Trey Lance or potentially higher than Mac Jones. And the negatives I don't think are as big a problem if they're there in a Kyle Shanahan offense as they would be elsewhere. So I don't really see an argument to draft one of the other guys above Justin Fields unless you just think that the difference between him and Mac Jones in terms of processing and, you know, running an offense mentally is, you know, seismic. Is just this giant chasm that cannot be bridged with all the other things that he brings and the effect that Kyle Shanahan's offense brings to the quarterback. It has to be him.
I would go Justin Fields here. I think the more I think this through, I think the Niners might want Trey Lance.
Trey Lance?
Yeah.
Why?
I look at Trey. I'm not saying I'm not going to take Trey Lance. Mm-hmm. I'm still leaning back toward I think they want to add that QB element to the run game. And I think Trey Lance is just a better pure runner than Justin Fields. He's got this, like, slipperiness to his game as a runner and the straight line speed. They both have straight line speed, and Justin Fields is effective on QB keeps and the whole deal. Trey Lance is a dynamic runner, like in between the tackles and open field. And I could see that plus the hypothetical upside, I could see the Niners saying, that's it. That's the potential home run, Sam. So I'm talking myself into Trey Lance being the guy for the Niners. Also, given all the smoke around Justin Fields and some of the concerns. I'm going to defer to when the guy has time to throw, Justin Fields puts it on his receivers.
Yeah.
Most important part of the Kyle Shanahan offense. Plus, he does have enough of the running component. And to your point, I think Shanahan's offense will mitigate Fields' flaws. You could say that about anybody. He'll mitigate flaws for every quarterback. But if Fields' biggest flaw is, you know, time to throw and getting rid of the ball, I think Shanahan's going to help that. So there we go. Justin Fields is now off the board. So we're going QB, Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, and then Justin Fields. The first pivot point in the draft is the Atlanta Falcons. Can we trade down with ourselves?
We can. I mean, my question is, who's going to want to come up for one of two remaining quarterbacks?
So we got Mac Jones and we have Trey Lance on the board. And I'm looking at...
Because critically, whoever it is doesn't think Atlanta's going to pick a quarterback. They don't think Cincinnati's going to pick a quarterback. They don't think Miami's going to pick a quarterback. So the first team that's potentially in the quarterback market is Detroit. That's 7. So...
we are both teams, right?
Sure.
We are the Lions.
Basically, you're looking at Denver and Carolina as the very quarterback-needy teams, right?
Yeah.
And you're saying, if one of those teams wants to go get a quarterback, do they have to jump as high as number 4?
If I'm Detroit, Let's start with Detroit at 7. I'm letting the draft come to me. I'm not going to get a quarterback. There's too much of a rebuild happening right now. I still have Jared Goff. I'm not forcing it. So I'm going to – Detroit's not trading up in our world here. Carolina at 8, Denver at 9. If you're the Panthers, are you just so over Teddy Bridgewater going into this year with a pretty good play caller and a pretty good
I think both those teams
core
are in the market. Both those teams are in the trade market. My point is simply, why would they trade as high as number 4? All they need to do if they want a quarterback is to either get ahead of the other one if you're Denver, or for both of them to get ahead of Detroit if you think they'll pick a quarterback.
Well,
which means the highest they need to go is number 6.
The risk for the Panthers at 8. The reason why you'd want to go to 4 is because the Broncos could jump up to 4, 5, 6, or 7.
Right. So you only need to jump the other one. Essentially, is my point, though.
So, if we're the Panthers or the Broncos, is Trey Lance or Mac Jones enough for you to even want to lock one of those guys in?
Denver, I think, could be desperate enough to do that. For them, it really comes down to what they see as, because this is the tricky spot, right? It's in theory, the best 3 quarterbacks in the draft have gone already. So you're now down to 4 or 5, having to give up a lot of draft capital to make that happen. And for Denver, it's kind of a last swing at the bat at this point, right? I mean, I know we've been joking about how many times can John Elway swing and miss at quarterback?
Yeah.
Now he's bought himself at least one more by giving himself another job and just putting somebody else's ass in the fire. But at some point, you have to be able to find a quarterback. Otherwise, somebody's got to get fired, surely. So for Denver, you have to worry, how confident are they in Trey Lance or Mac Jones? Or if it unfolds like this, and those are the 3 quarterbacks that have gone, are they instead trying to get the deal done for Russell Wilson or Deshaun Watson rather than trade something comparable to get as high as number 4 and take the 4th best quarterback available in this draft? It just starts to get very, very risky at this stage.
Yeah, and I feel like if you're debating between Trey Lance or Mac Jones at 8, 9.
Yeah, sure.
You maybe just take who's there. And if you're the Panthers, you might not even take one of those QBs.
Right, but now you're debating, how much do we need to give up to get up to 4 to draft one of those guys?
Can't be worth it.
That's
I don't think.
Kind of where I am. So ever since Miami made those moves, I'm of the opinion that, trading down makes a lot of sense for Atlanta. I just don't know that they're going to be able to convince buyers to come that high.
So now that we have, as the Lions, Panthers, and Broncos GMs, we have convinced ourselves we're not trading up. We're not doing it. Is there anyone, let's just check below that a little bit. The Patriots at 15. Is there another team? Washington football team at 19. Do they have enough to come up?
I mean, they have enough, but again, you're in the same boat of, look how much you're going to need to give up to get the 4th or 5th best quarterback available, in theory. Now, one of those guys might have one of the 4th or 5th best quarterback available, might be number 1 on their board. Oh,
it might be.
There are teams out there that might absolutely buy into the idea that Mac Jones is Tom Brady 2.0. And if he is, he's the number 1 player on your board, right? He's it's Mac Jones number 1, Trevor Lawrence number 2, Zach Wilson number 3.
He's Tom Brady, yeah.
Right. So if you buy into that, and your phrase, right? Somewhere in the NFL, somebody agrees with Dan Orlovsky. Somewhere in the NFL, somebody has Mac Jones ranked number 1 on their draft board, thinks he is Tom Brady 2.0, and is a better NFL quarterback prospect than Trevor Lawrence. Now, if one of those teams, or if one of those people happens to be a decision maker in New England or Washington, that team is well capable of doing something crazy enough like jumping from 19 to 4 or 15 to 4. It's possible. I can't see a world where you consider it likely, but you can't rule it out, right?
Until the 49ers made that move up to number 3, and the Dolphins were sitting at 3, and there was a chance that the 3rd quarterback came off the board at 6. I mean, at 6 or 7. I thought that New England might be the team to make a move.
Yeah.
The fact that there's 3 QBs off the board and now you're looking at 4, QB4, so to speak, right? I think it's less likely.
At that point, you have to be confident, 1, in your own evaluation, obviously, and 2, that the way you evaluate it is different enough from everybody else that it's a viable option. You would either have to have that pre-planned that, hey, look, if the draft unfolds the way we think it will, Lawrence, Wilson, Fields, we love Trey Lance or Mac Jones. We have a move in place to be on the phone immediately and say, hey, Atlanta, here's what we're willing to offer for 4. Let's make this happen.
In our world, if I'm the Patriots or football team or anyone else down there, Eagles, whatever, I'm not doing it. I'm not going to go get a quarterback. So Falcons are picking at 4, and I think this is the first real pivot point in the draft.
Yeah.
And look, the Falcons have a ton of defensive needs. We just did a PFF NFL Daily on Friday that said who's the best defensive prospect in this draft, and there's legitimate debate. In past years, there's never been a debate. I don't think in past years there would be a Chase Young sitting here. There'd be a Myles Garrett sitting here if you had QBs go above the top defensive prospect. We just don't have that. There's no Jalen Ramsey. So if I'm the Falcons, is Kyle Pitts the play here?
Yeah, I think he has to be. They're locked into Matt Ryan for at least another couple of years. They can't trade him. The number's just too insane. They have Julio Jones. They could trade him, but at the point where you're sort of locked into one aging superstar, you might as well be locked into the other one. So let's add something else. Let's add a new dynamic weapon. Now you've got Calvin Ridley as well. You could go Jamar Chase, add another one, but it's never redundant. But I think you get a bigger impact by adding a Kyle Pitts who brings something genuinely different to that offense that they don't have.
Yeah, to your point, if the tiebreaker is different,
Yeah.
and if we're looking at Pitts and Chase as very similar as far as offensive weapons,
and
go.
you're not going to fix the defense with one pick in the top 5. You might overload the offense with talent to the point where it becomes like just uncoverable and unstoppable with a Kyle Pitts. So I think that has to be the pick if you can't trade down. I don't think that's beyond the realms of possibility. I just don't think I can't see an obvious trade that presents itself that we would make in this scenario. So there it is.
With the 4th pick, the PFF NFL podcast selects offensive weapon Kyle Pitts, Florida.
Nicely done. Offensive weapon. That's been kind of ruined, though, from Denard Robinson, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Wasn't that his thing?
He was a college offensive weapon.
Yeah, and became just an NFL bust.
Who happened to take most of
kind of
his
ruined it,
snaps.
unfortunately.
Yeah, it wasn't good. Kyle Pitts, offensive weapon / tight end. All right, here is where we live in Cincinnati, Sam, and the biggest debate in town right now. It's not Skyline versus Gold Star. It is Penei Sewell versus Jamar Chase. That is the debate here in Cincinnati. Skyline or Gold Star?
What a horrible debate. I have an answer, and it's a very simple one, right? Are you a fan of onions in any way, shape, or form?
In very little form.
I hate onions. Hate them,
Yeah,
right?
very little
and
form.
What Gold Star is essentially Skyline chili, but with the added chopped onions. Just
No,
like
not in
chunks
no,
of
no, no, no.
big,
That's-
horrible diced chunks of onions just lobbed into this
I haven't
thing
even tried
that's
Gold Star,
already
so yeah.
hideous. No, neither have I, because I've looked at it, and that's what it is, right? So they've taken Skyline, something which is objectively already awful, and added an extra bad thing to it. Therefore, it's worse. That's my answer to that
So
one.
Skyline is safe. Skyline is Penei Sewell.
I mean, it's not safe.
I mean, in the grand, let's just end this analogy.
Yeah, don't go there.
Cincinnati chili is pretty poor outside of
It's not great. It's
you
not
know.
great, Bob.
native Cincinnatians.
I mean, it's the kind of food that if you're trapped in a Midwest town with no hope of getting anywhere else, that's what you could convince yourself is, it's a local delicacy.
It's usually right next to a KFC.
you've been to
just
other
go
places.
go get your fried
I'm just
chicken.
saying, however long ago they invented this thing, when you were sitting here and you're kind of trapped in the middle of the country with nowhere to go, you could convince yourself that, hey, look, this is something we have and nobody else has. But if you've experienced other foods, like someone rocked up with a pizza, you're like, oh, yeah, I don't know what we've been doing to ourselves for the last 50 years. This is a big mistake.
I just can't believe that they proudly present it to the media in the second half of Bengals games.
Yeah.
Hey, we had all this really good food in the first half. Second half, get your Skyline. Sorry, let's go. Cincinnati Bengals at 5. Penei Sewell
Yeah.
or Jamar Chase?
Have you seen that graphic that's floating around on Twitter? Somebody tried to reduce this into caricature form. Essentially, it's
I did see that. Yes.
Joe Burrow throwing to anybody with Penei Sewell blocking, completed pass, everything's great. Joe Burrow throwing to Jamar Chase with anybody blocking, Joe Burrow's getting killed, pass drop short, game over. Right? Essentially, a caricature argument that you need to put blocking in front of him so that he can deliver a pass to a receiver. It doesn't matter who the receiver is if he doesn't have time to get the ball in the air. It's game over. Problem is you can reverse the same thing, which is a wide receiver that gets open allows the pass to go quicker. So It doesn't matter who's blocking. You can make the argument either way, but I think it's an interesting way of debating it, and it has its supporters. Friend of the show, Robert Mays, buys into that argument. I think Nate Tice as well, the two Athletic Football Podcast guys, they buy into that side of the argument that, hey, look, you need the platform. You need somebody to pass block for Joe Burrow in order to get that ball in the air before you get a Jamar Chase.
Yeah, I don't buy it. Here's why. There's 5 blockers.
Correct.
Okay. And you need minimum.
Yes.
You need perspective on what that means, right? If Penei Sewell is a better blocker than, say, average offensive tackle, he is going to allow 2 or 3, he'll have 2 or 3 fewer losses in a given game. So we're talking 2 or 3 plays from a pass blocking standpoint where Penei Sewell is better than, say, Riley Reif, who they just signed at tackle. So he's maybe 2 or 3 plays better if Penei Sewell is really good. If Jamar Chase gets open if Jamar Chase is just as good as Penei Sewell, he'll get open maybe 10% more than the next best receiver. And that might be 4 or 5 routes in a given game. So we're talking 4 or 5 routes of getting open for Jamar Chase versus 2 or 3 pass blocks for Penei Sewell. And then you factor in Penei Sewell is 1/5 of the offensive line, and Jamar Chase is either half of your receiving core in certain formations or 1/3 of your receiving core in certain formations. So Jamar Chase getting open fairly quickly is really just as important as the one blocker, right? So it's not as simple as, well, if he's under pressure, like a bad offensive tackle is not giving up pressure every single down. The offensive line might be feeling like that, but it's not happening every single down. So it's not as simple as what that meme is. All of that said, locking in a good offensive tackle in a world where offensive tackles are hard to find is extremely valuable. I'm in on that as a theory. And I don't think that signing Riley Reif has taken the Bengals out of this Penei Sewell market. Now, I don't know what they do in year one if they have Penei Sewell, Jonah Williams, and Riley Reif. None of those guys scream guard. None of those guys feel like a guard. Now, could you just suck it up? Could you put Penei Sewell at guard in year one just for fun and be better than what the Bengals have at guard? Absolutely.
I think they'd move Jonah to guard, sadly.
Jonah? See, I feel like they would. I think they might be more likely to take Penei, put him at guard, like the Dolphins did it with Laramie Tunsil. Right or wrong, they did it with Laramie Tunsil for a year or two, right? At guard. Moved him to tackle. I think it was a year. Riley Reif can't play guard after this point. That's the riskiest thing, is taking a guy. But at the same time, Penei Sewell and Jonah Williams both might be better tackles than Riley Reif.
Yes.
So while Riley Reif doesn't take them out of the Penei Sewell conversation, it does make 2021 team building more complicated for the Bengals.
Yes. To me, the biggest issue is that their biggest problem is on the interior anyway, right? Like, as much as Penei Sewell is potentially great and potentially a big upgrade at tackle, in theory, tackle is not the problem right now. Like, that graphic of anybody in front of Joe Burrow, there's 3 anybody's in front of Joe Burrow, even with Penei Sewell there. That's your issue, is that you can bring him in, put him at left tackle. Okay, that's one of your 5 spots done. The other 3, the ones right in front of him, are anybody's, and he's getting killed still. So it didn't fix the issue. In fact, it didn't do anything to address the issue, other than whoever your left guard anybody, Tofu, might be slightly better because he's being bathed he's being imbued with whatever sweet ingredient Penei Sewell is bringing to the table, right? So left guard Tofu anybody is slightly sweeter because he's being blessed with the ingredient that Penei Sewell is. But you're still 3/5 of anybody in front of him. Whereas if you bring in Jamar Chase, that guy is now being teamed with Tyler Boyd, with T. Higgins. There's actual weapons to throw to. Now you're getting closer to, across the board, there's some good receivers for him to throw to. And okay, the offensive line is still a freaking mess, but now he's got somewhere to go pretty much every play. Because as you said, Jamar Chase might only be getting open above and beyond the last guy he's replacing 5-6 times a game. But Tyler Boyd is still getting open however many times a game. T. Higgins is still getting open. So overall, you're now seeing somebody open on most of your plays. If you bring in Penei Sewell, stuff him at left tackle, potentially all you're doing is making the difference between Jonah Williams, who's already pretty good, and Penei Sewell, so let's say he's very good right off the bat. you're talking 5 plays a game where just your left tackle isn't giving up pressure versus the other 4 are still giving up, or at least 3 of those guys are still giving up a ton of pressure. So it isn't actually materially changing the situation that much, which I think is the biggest issue.
I'm with you there, and I also think the idea creep back toward average, our axiom here, I think is what we apply. Now, Penei Sewell does get you back toward average almost immediately, I think. Even with those holes, if you did kick him or Jonah Williams inside and it is 3/5, you're far closer to average than you are right now on paper because of the 3 weaknesses on the interior. So there's a debate for Penei Sewell. I think there's 2 things at play. What gets you closer to average at the offensive line? And I know people have said, I've seen this too. I haven't seen a young quarterback play well unless they have a great offensive line. You have to do that first. Offensive line first. And it's not really true. I mean, it's
not even true last year.
No,
the 2 best rookie quarterbacks both played well in front of garbage offensive lines, behind garbage offensive lines. Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert.
Yeah,
both
and they played fine.
Atrocious
now,
offensive lines.
Burrow got hurt, and everybody's going to say, well, he got hurt, so you have to protect him.
Correct. And I agree. Look, I think that, it's not good, right? Ideally, you don't want your quarterback behind a line so bad that at some point he's inevitably going to get hurt.
Yeah.
So absolutely fix the offensive line. My point is simply that Penei Sewell on his own is not going to achieve that. You need more additions to that offensive line.
Right.
And in particular, they need to be inside.
So, our friend Jeff Schwartz has said stuff like, well, Patrick Mahomes had Mitch. He didn't give up a pressure on, the entire Super Bowl run. True. Mm-hmm. But the Kansas City offensive line during Mahomes' tenure has been right around league average, maybe slightly better. Again, it's not mid-90s Cowboys. Deshaun Watson has had great success behind a poor offensive line. It's not ideal. They've gotten better over time. His success has gotten better as they've gotten better, but it's not like he didn't have success. Russell Wilson has had great success behind a bad offensive line. Again, it's not ideal, but it's doable. But I think you solve the same problem by having guys get open quickly. Now, all that said, here's where I think the tiebreaker is. If we agree that they need a 3rd wide receiver because we're trying to attack opposing defenses with difficult covers, and they need offensive linemen, what are you going to do in the 2nd round? Where are you in the 2nd round or 3rd round at that position? Is there a good enough wide receiver on the turn? Is there a good enough tackle on the turn? And honestly, this might not be a great tiebreaker because we have a lot of late 1st, early 2nd grades on both tackles and receivers.
So if I'm the GM in Cincinnati for this pick, this is where I make a scout's day right here, right? Because to me, this is literally a coin flip. It's 50-50. I don't have a strong opinion either way. I can see the case either way. So what you do is, right, guy that's really excelled in the whole process, gone above and beyond, really put in the work. You turn him and you say, son, who we taking? And then that guy gives you the draft pick. You put it in. Guy feels like $1 million. The problem made his day.
Problem, it's the Bengals who don't have any scouts.
Well, look, I can't fix everything.
Hypothetically.
Look, I'm just saying, whoever that kid is, that guy's going to make your draft pick.
All right.
You're the kid, Steve. Son, who we drafting?
Man, I'm going to go back. That
doesn't work if you're going to do the same thing as me. I'm on the fence. I need you to make the decision, son.
I'm going with my first instinct, which was Jamar Chase.
Okay, there we go.
Wide receiver Jamar Chase is the pick at number 5 for the Cincinnati Bengals.
Good work, little Jimmy.
And part of the tiebreaker for me is it's just that confidence that Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow are going to work together.
That can't hurt.
Honestly, that's in that discussion.
Not just that, but I'm betting in this world of the quarterback wants input. If Joe Burrow wants input, even though he just came off getting killed by that offensive line, I'm betting he would want Jamar Chase just because he's had it before, right? He knows what that is. He's going to want his teammate back in Cincinnati. I mean, if you're 50-50, if you're on the fence, why not make your quarterback happy?
Yeah, you could build your offense to help protect your quarterback as well. All right, so we'll get more offensive line help later. Bengals fans, don't worry. And we've just slowed this whole thing down, but let's do it. Miami Dolphins at number 6, Sam.
Mm-hmm.
Penei Sewell still on the board.
Yep.
Devontae Smith is your boy. He's on the board. Speaking of reunions, is Devontae your guy for the Dolphins?
I would do
and
that.
Tua?
So if you're going to prevent that happening, you need to argue me out of it because I think Devontae Smith is not only the best fit for this offense, but I think he's value. I think he's a good elite wide receiver, and they need elite wide receivers that can separate.
I don't know if I'm going to talk you out of that. I think I'm okay with that. I mean, I am okay with that. I'm looking at the Dolphins' offensive line, and even though I didn't make this Austin Jackson pick last year, I feel like he wasn't a disaster.
They're not going to give up on him, right? There's no way, even with Penei Sewell on the board, I don't think they're going to see that as a seismic upgrade over a former first-round pick to the point where they're going to want to bench one of them, right? They either bench Austin Jackson or they bench the guy that was better than him, Robert Hunt, last year, and move Austin Jackson to the right tackle or move Palazzolo to right tackle, whatever. It's like the Bengals thing. It involves them shuffling in a way that I don't think they want to do. Or we could draft a guy that immediately comes in, fills a need, and adds a lot to the offense.
Let's go Devontae Smith at 6 for the Dolphins. Again, from a Dolphins perspective, they traded down from 3 all the way to 12, back up to 6. And I think they said, okay, we're going to get a blue chip non-quarterback. One of those 4 blue chippers being Kyle Pitts, Jamar Chase, Devontae Smith, or Penei Sewell. Mm-hmm. Or maybe just 3 blue chippers, but you said 4. So, all right.
I mean, I think he fits. Look, Devontae Smith's negative. His red flag is that he's 170 pounds, right? Now, for that to be a big concern, other than just there's no real precedent of people of that size succeeding, for that to be a real concern, fine. Show me where it's impacted his college play. He hasn't missed a ton of time. He got injured this year and it was a broken thumb or something, right? It's not like a clear, that's a 170-pound problem right there. He just broke a thumb. Outside of that, the dude has been durable. He doesn't play like he's 170. He plays with strength and power, particularly at the catch point. He takes hits, doesn't show any negative effect from them. His weakness is that he's 170, and that's just scary because it's not conventional. But most elite, awesome players of some variety were in some way, shape, or form mold breakers. They didn't fit the general rule of thumb, so I'm not going to ding him just for that. The other thing people have criticized him for is breakout age, but Alabama had 4 first-round receivers, and I think you can honestly make a case that he stood out even when Jerry Jeudy and Henry Ruggs were there ahead of him. He was a guy that was often making bigger plays than those two, so I'm not going to ding him for that either. So at which point I think he's right up there. Yeah,
breakout age, I mean, they're just like baselines of seeing historically what's worked and hasn't worked. But when you add that level of context, hey, you're sitting here with 3 other first-rounders, you can understand why.
I don't think it's necessarily binary. If you have a guy that breaks out at 18, 19 years old, regardless of what was ahead of him, he was probably pretty good.
Right.
But if you have a guy that doesn't break out until his final year because there were 4 first-round wide receivers on the team at the same time, I don't think you can immediately go to the other side and say, well, he didn't break out at 18, therefore he sucks.
So right now, what would be great is if we had some of our YouTube listeners maybe even drop in what's been drafted so far and help us keep track of this whole thing. I mean, we have a spreadsheet, but our listeners might not. Right now, we have 3 quarterbacks and 3 pass catchers off the board. I don't know how realistic this is on draft night, but again, it's our mock draft.
I don't think it's crazy.
I don't think it's crazy either. Because
Devontae Smith is the first pick, I think, that would be a deviation from a regular draft board for other people.
I still think the Bengals would lean Penei Sewell over Jamar Chase. So I think there'll be a tackle in the top 5. But right now we have Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, Justin Fields, Kyle Pitts, Jamar Chase, Devontae Smith off the board. 3 QBs, 3 pass catchers. It puts the Lions up on the clock. And again, as much as I think they would love a defensive prospect, is Penei Sewell too good to pass up here for the Lions, who have Tyrell Crosby slated as their starting right tackle next year?
Now, this is where I think it gets interesting because Denver might not have loved the 2 remaining quarterbacks to the point where they would jump to 4, but now all they got to do is jump above Carolina. Now if they want one of those quarterbacks and you think Carolina will snag him, do you love Trey Lance enough to jump 2 spots to where Detroit are? I would argue that's a pretty good chance.
Who's the best quarterback for the Panthers? Who's the one for the Broncos? I think the Panthers. Again, when I was watching Mac Jones, I get some Teddy Bridgewater vibes, and I think the Panthers, there's 2 ways of looking at it. They have Joe Brady, who had Joe Burrow, so you want a guy that's, distributor type and Mac Jones type. But I also think the Panthers might look and say the same thing Kyle Shanahan's saying, Teddy Bridgewater gives us a cap, Mac Jones might give us a cap. The Panthers might want to add that QB run game element and just try to hit a home run and go for the ceiling. Trey Lance. I think Trey Lance is a better fit for the Panthers, and Mac Jones is a better fit for the Broncos.
Maybe. It's difficult to know when you've got an offense like Carolina has. All the quarterbacks they've had in that offense have been fairly similar. Teddy Bridgewater, Joe Burrow, Drew Brees, Teddy Bridgewater again.
This is the Panthers and the Saints tree here.
Right. And Joe Brady in particular as offensive coordinator and assistant, all those kinds of things. they've all been similar stylistically. They've got varying degrees of athleticism, but none of them are like run-heavy quarterbacks. Now, does that mean those are just the guys they've had in a sequence? And that just happens to be the way they've deployed. Two of those guys are an all-time great in college and an all-time great in the NFL, and Teddy Bridgewater. Or does it mean like that's the style of quarterback they actually do like? That's kind of what they want, a guy that can mentally process the system and add, a little bit on the ground whenever he needs to. And that's what they're looking for, at which point Mac Jones they might see as like a Teddy Bridgewater plus. People, his fans, supporters are like Tom Brady 2.0, but a more realistic idea might be, what if he's just better than Teddy Bridgewater? Same kind of style, but just a better version of that, in which case he would fit that offense really well.
Maybe I'm looking at it as too much of like a macro level.
Or are they like, hey, we've been able to make do with these guys that can't move. What if we added someone that's like a real athlete as well? That's the way the league's trending, and we can teach the rest. I don't know. I think it might be a case. So this could work out great for everybody, right? Denver jumps to 7, drafts Trey Lance, and Carolina makes do.
I just
with
don't
the quarterback
know.
They wanted anyway.
Denver has built this receiving core where, again, it's hitting open throws is the most important part of any quarterback skill set. But Denver has very specifically built this incredible receiving core. Mm-hmm. Jerry Jeudy and KJ Hamler were two of the best receivers last year at getting open, which makes sense. That's their skill set. Cortland Sutton's coming back. Tim Patrick's still dead. They have an incredible group of receivers, and I think the Broncos' best bet as an offense is to be a high-volume passing attack, trying to compete with Justin Herbert and the Chargers, and of course Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, and even the Raiders.
So they both want Mac Jones.
Yeah, I think Mac Jones might be the better fit for both. Well, I mean, I was saying Trey Lance for the Panthers because they might want something different, but I think Mac Jones specifically for the Broncos.
So either
is
way,
better.
the question is, do Denver want him enough to jump above Carolina? Because this is probably like, it's not their last swing at it because.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right.
You want to do it?
Yeah.
All right. In the PFF NFL mock draft here, NFL podcast mock draft, we, the Denver Broncos, are going to jump up to number 7. I don't have the exact terms of the deal, but as the Broncos, we're going to give up some future draft capital. I haven't worked it out on the charts yet, but the Broncos are going to give up something future.
So it's like 150 points using the standard old Jimmy Johnson trade chart, which is like a mid to low third rounder.
Yeah, we'll do that.
So let's say
we the Lions are all about trading down here because we're still probably going to get the same player potentially.
Yeah, it's probably going to take a little bit of value added because you're the one that desperately wants it. It's probably going to take Denver's third round pick. It's probably going to be right on the money to jump above Carolina. That's got to be worth it.
Let's do it
for Denver anyway.
I'm screwing up the spreadsheet here, but let's do it. All right, so the Lions are going to go to 9.
Yep.
Broncos are coming up to 7 to get Mac Jones. Because we think the Panthers might want him. And we, the Panthers, are we settling for Trey Lance here?
Well, that's the thing. So now, are you so in need of a quarterback, or are you coveting a quarterback so much that you're going to take Trey Lance, who is deemed the 5th best quarterback in this draft class by the rest of the league?
Okay, for us as the Panthers sitting here at 8, I look at Trey Lance as needing a year to sit.
Okay.
Particularly behind Teddy Bridgewater. I don't think he steps in and he's better than Teddy Bridgewater. I think that run game component I talked about when we discussed the Niners at number 3, you have that. I don't know if I'm ready to do that. I like the forward-looking approach of having a Trey Lance. I also look at my left tackle situation and see Cam Irving there. And I'm thinking, again, Penei Sewell, value-wise, at number 8. Do I force the quarterback, who I think might be a backup right now for my team, the Panthers, versus Penei Sewell stepping in and solidifying an offensive line that has not looked great. It doesn't look great on paper.
Counterpoint, Joe Brady is seen as one of the best offensive minds in the game. And if there's one thing we've seen over the last couple of years, it's that quarterbacks with that rushing element, particularly a really high-level one, provide an incredibly high floor to an offense. So even if he isn't ready right away to be a better passer than Teddy Bridgewater, he might give the offense a higher floor than Teddy Bridgewater, who, let's face it, was playing pretty bad football last year, like the worst of his career in the system that in theory is supposed to be as good as it gets for him. Maybe they look at it and say, all right, a lot of the problems we can actually paper over by bringing in a Trey Lance because of what he can do. It's sort of similar to the way that Jalen Hurts made an immediate difference to that Philadelphia offense without actually playing very well, just because of that rushing threat and not being Carson Wentz. How much is there a potential for Trey Lance teamed with Joe Brady to make this offense significantly better from day one just by not playing as badly as Teddy Bridgewater as a passer, and more to the point, giving Joe Brady the creativity to be able to hide a lot of things with what he does running the ball?
Yeah, I don't hate the Trey Lance fit here. Here's the other thing I'll say. You're in the division with the Bucs, the Super Bowl champs. Mm-hmm. Tom Brady's there for another 2 years, hypothetically. We're looking at that. And if you do have it, so like adding a tackle this year when you're probably not going to win the division, maybe you compete for a playoff spot. I like Trey Lance. I mean, Trey Lance maybe hits his stride as Tom Brady's potentially retiring or hitting free agency at 45 years old. And the Falcons have Matt Ryan for 2 more years. And yeah.
Given that they've been in on every quarterback available this offseason, reportedly, I find it very hard to believe that they would pass on one, even if it was the 5th quarterback taken in this draft, without having to trade anywhere. Like if they don't make a trade, if they sit where they are, if they get to 8 and one of the 5 quarterbacks is available, I just don't think they'll pass. I think they'll take one. Don't you?
You think it's Trey Lance?
I think it has to be. I don't think, because if it isn't, they're not taking a quarterback, and they've basically done a Chicago Bears on it.
Let's go Trey Lance. Let's do it. Trying to hit home runs here as the Carolina Panthers. We appreciate everybody tuning in live here on a Monday morning. You're headed to work, and you're like, hey, I need some PFF NFL podcast in my life. So we have over 1,000 people watching us live as you get into my brain and Sam's brain, discussing every pick in the first round. If you're new here, please hit that subscribe button. All sorts of great stuff here on our PFF YouTube channel. Tell your friends we're live and talking mock and picking for your team right now. So we just took Trey Lance, and now we're just going all QBs and wide receivers coming off the board, but it all makes sense.
Don't forget offensive weapons.
Offensive weapons. QBs and offensive weapons and receivers. Trey Lance to the Carolina Panthers. The top 5 QBs are off the board.
Done.
So now we got to get into the down and dirty. Are there defensive players in play yet? I think so. Detroit Lions are now here at number 9. As the Lions GM, I'm happy with my move. I traded down from 7 to 9. I didn't want to necessarily force a quarterback. It would have been cool.
An extra third.
Yeah, picked up an extra third, right?
If you're not in the quarterback market, if you don't love Lance or Jones, it's a no-brainer move, right?
Yeah, it is.
Because you think they're going to go in the next 2 picks. You're literally not changing your pick, and you're picking up an extra third rounder.
So that is the no-brainer. I've got some time in my rebuild here in Detroit.
A lot of time.
The best player currently on the PFF NFL draft board, Penei Sewell. Do we go best player at position of value and need here?
Yeah, why not?
Penei Sewell.
Do it.
Detroit Lions are taking Penei Sewell. And we still don't have...
You're not buying into the Slater above Sewell hype?
I'm not. And the more I looked at the numbers, we talked about it the other day. I mean, they're close. I get it. Penei Sewell being as good as he was in the Pac-12 at 19 and 20 years old.
Yes.
That's what's convinced me.
I think
you can do it all.
You can make an argument that right now Slater is a better pass blocker in particular than Penei Sewell. But one, Sewell isn't bad as a pass blocker. It's not like the difference is huge. And two, I think Sewell's potential, given what he did at 19 years old, is a lot higher. So do you take the guy that's kind of maxed out on his potential, who's a little bit better right now, or do you shoot for the moon and take a guy who could be amazing, given what we've seen from him already? I think you shoot for the moon, especially if you're Detroit. Like, you got 6 years in this thing.
Yeah.
What the hell does it matter if you take a guy and he miss a bit?
I've also made the joke that, like, there's something to, like, the first pick of a regime. And the first pick of the Chris Spielman, Dan Campbell regime, I was joking, Micah Parsons, that nice hard-nosed linebacker. But getting somebody in the trenches feels on brand for this new Lions team. Either way, Penei Sewell.
I loved when he was doing his workout numbers, right? And the 3-cone was like something. It was like 7.5 or something. It's like a big number. And people were like, "Well, yeah, if you look at that number for all tackles ever, it's slightly above average. But if you look at it for people that are above 330." It's like the 88th percentile. It's like insane, right? So you have to adjust for the fact that this is a monstrous human being we're talking about here. This is not just a regular college tackle that you're going to take out and say, you play barely above 300 pounds and you have to eat ice cream every night to keep that weight on. This is a freaking huge human who's playing at 335 at 19 years old. He is athletic for the size that he is.
All right, so we have our 9th overall pick. The Lions moved from 7 to 9. Penei Sewell is off the board. I do want to take a quick break to tell you about our friends over at Underdog Fantasy. If you like fantasy football and if you like playing fantasy for money, you need to check out Underdog Fantasy. Underdog's got everything, including season-long and playoff best ball. Best ball is a season-long game where you draft a team like you normally do, but that's it. There's no in-season roster management. Underdog automatically selects your best performers each week, saving you loads of time. Now, here's the catch, which isn't really a catch. It's a steal. You go to Underdog Fantasy and deposit $10. That's it, just $10 using the promo code PFF, and you get a free PFF Edge annual subscription. That's promo code PFF, and you get PFF Edge, 365 days of access, including the updated PFF Draft Guide, which is incredible. You get it all for just that $10 deposit. Use the promo code PFF. Draft now at Underdog Fantasy. All right, 10th overall, Dallas Cowboys. I think the first defensive player is coming off the board.
Yep.
Here's our debate. Internally, we put the draft board together. Our guy, Caleb Farley, who we all think is probably the best cornerback in the league when he's in the draft when he's healthy, the most potential, the most freaky athletic ability. Even when he's not good, he can still be good. He's got that makeup speed. But the injury risk drops him to the 20s on our draft board. I know you love Farley, so let's debate. I think it's between Farley and Surtain here to fill a massive need for the Cowboys. Values there, Surtain or Farley here.
I mean, look, you're gonna lean on your medical experts within the room, but absent of those, I think it's close enough that you would say it's a deal breaker.
In this room, you are the medical expert.
In this particular room where it's just you and me, yes. In a draft room, I'm going to assume I'm going to have additional medical experts above and beyond what I bring to the table.
Can you just call your dad?
Potentially ones with an actual medical degree, for example.
Call your dad live on the podcast right now. Throw this hypothetical lower back situation at him and see what he says.
What it is. What was it, like a micro discectomy or something?
Yeah.
Anyway, look, it's kind of like the Jamar Chase, Devontae Smith thing. If you think that they're like 1 and 1A, which I think they probably are, it's enough that it's like a tiebreaker. Like swing, even if it's going the other way, I think you just default to the idea, well, look, there's two guys, both of which we're really comfortable with, one of whom has a vaguely scary back issue at stake. Why would we screw with that? So I think Dallas would lean Patrick Surtain 2. Like, why not Junior?
There's a lot of guys using 2 lately.
But
there's guys using senior.
Like, the third makes sense. Like 3 is just the third or the fourth. 2
maybe
is
his middle
Junior.
name's different.
So okay.
So you're just Patrick Surtain 2, but you're not Patrick middle name Surtain Jr.
But what do you? Because you call him the second?
I don't know.
Because you can't just be like Patrick Surtain 2.
I think the
You
second
can't
is
call him
like
Patrick
Junior.
Surtain because that's his dad.
It's Patrick Surtain, the guy at Alabama. That's who we're drafting, by the way. So the Dallas Cowboys, new system with Dan Quinn. I think both Surtain and Caleb Farley fit it perfectly fine. Surtain's the top cornerback on our board right now. I like the fit. I like the value. I think Dallas is well suited to get a corner at number 10.
I think is the cleanest cornerback prospect available. The dude does not lose deep. He doesn't lose on double moves. He's so in control. I mean, he plays like a guy who's had a lifetime of experience of his dad, like giving him tips and tricks on how to play. You know
Let's do it.
So
Let's do it.
The only concern I have about him is like how easily he gets beaten on slants sometimes. Just like the first default move because he isn't as aggressive as some other corners at that first move. But that feels like something you should easily be able to fix. So I'm all for it.
The first corner is off the board. Patrick Surtain to the Dallas Cowboys. That brings up NFC East rival New York Giants at number 11. I think they were a team that was probably eyeing those wide receivers. They still could be, but they just added Kenny Golladay. So now they're looking a little bit better with Kenny Golladay, Darius Slayton, and Sterling Shepard as their top trio. Offensive line still needs some help, and I think
this isn't the easiest spot in the world.
Defense could use some help as well.
Like, a lot of the times the draft unfolds perfectly for a team and they end up with like a choice of great players.
Yeah.
I don't know that the draft has unfolded the way that the Giants would have loved it to for them. This is not the easiest spot in the world for them.
So they've invested a lot at tackle in recent years, and it's still a bit of a question mark. But you have Nate Solder there. You have last year's first-round pick, Andrew Thomas, there. You have developmental third-rounder Matt Peart there. You have 3 guys who potentially are starting a tackle. It's not, none of them are locked in as we know that they're going to be great. Rashawn Slater is still on the board. Do you add more depth to a position that already has high numbers? I don't think they're going to go. I don't think I would go receiver, given the investment in Golladay.
Right.
Is Micah Parsons a player here? The Giants never pick linebackers that high.
When they do, they look like Micah Parsons.
But when they do look like Micah Parsons. Is Micah Parsons, not only does it fit a need, he's the top player on the PFF draft board remaining, number 7 overall.
All right.
You like Micah Parsons there for the Giants?
Yeah, let's do that.
Add a 3-down playmaker to the middle of that defense.
Man, he would look good in those throwback 1980s Giants jerseys. That's a very Micah Parsons uniform.
Classic Giants. Get Belichick over there coordinating that defense just to make it all work. So Micah Parsons, linebacker to the New York Giants at number 11. That brings up the Philadelphia Eagles here at number 12. They moved down from 6, presumably because let's build around Jalen Hurts. Let's do it.
For a year.
We got some holes still at corner. It's another team that has volume at receiver, given all the different investment that they've made there, but we just don't know who's going to be good there. Where do the Eagles go here?
Yeah, another vaguely tough spot, I think. They could be in the edge market because, Brandon Graham is reaching the end of his lifespan there. Derek Barnett has been good, not great. Josh Sweat, again, similar, sort of made some plays, but not. This defense was at its best where they were able to run like 7 deep on the defensive line, and everybody was getting pressure to the point where they were, as a team, getting more pressure than anybody else, 45% over the course of a year. That's starting to get chipped away at now, and it's not as impactful as it used to be. Do they try and rebuild that and say this was the foundation of this defense? Let's keep throwing resources at that defensive front and try and repair the erosion that's been done to it? Or do they say, no, we got bigger problems elsewhere. Let's draft a Jalen Waddle or somebody at receiver that's going to make an impact difference to us there.
I'm gonna push Waddle out of the Eagles conversation just because I'm wondering if he's redundant to Jalen Reagor, the guy they drafted last year. And I think I'll get receiver depth if I'm the Eagles day 2. So I do want to add receivers if I'm the Eagles. I don't know if I want Waddle at this point. I think there's a debate, edge versus, because you're mentioning defensive line. Mm-hmm. Is it the edge defenders are all now in the 20s on our draft board. There's no clean-cut prospect there. Christian Barmore is the top defensive lineman. He's at number 15. I think he's in play. And I know you don't love J.C. Horn as much as others, but he's the number 2 corner on our board. Caleb Farley's still there. Do you risk the injury with Farley? Do we go J.C. Horn, or is Christian Barmore the play on the defensive
The thing
interior?
about the edge rushers, though, is whilst they're all sort of in the 20s on our board, they're not going to go that low. Like, somebody is going to love the first one of these edge rushers higher than that. Part of our problem is that, like, each one of these guys has got some question marks, and it's enough that they all sort of get depressed for us. But when you're an NFL team, and it's like, just order these edge rushers, 32 different shots at that, one of them is going to have one of these guys in the top 10 somewhere. So if you're the Eagles and you have this shot of you get to pick your favorite edge rusher, you might have the guy that's number 1 on your board in the top 10, 15 somewhere, and it becomes good value for you, even if for us it would be like a 10 kind of place reach. So I think edge rusher is still very much in play and not necessarily bad value, even if it would be higher than we would have them on our board.
I like Kwity Paye. He's our top edge, and I think, man, does he fit what the Eagles like to do, is burst and change of direction, and he's got some plays on tape that show his power in the run game. It'd be an unexciting pick if I'm the Eagles. I also look at the time they made the Super Bowl run. It was, the secondary really came together there. So what do you think, man?
I would lean edge. I like Paye.
Let's go Kwity Paye.
I think there's a couple of other guys you could throw into that mix as well. Owe, I think, though, that, any of those guys I think make a lot of sense.
So the Eagles pick up Kwity Paye, and here's what it's going to look like. Kwity Paye plus extra first-rounder next year. So you're talking about 2 picks, 2 players for the price of 1, and it ends up being a really good move for the Eagles.
And next year you are probably going to have 3 first-round picks if Jalen Hurts doesn't become the guy.
So the Los Angeles Chargers are up at 13. Rashawn Slater's still on the board. I think it's a sprint to the podium situation
immediately
for that.
Take him. Done.
The one other name is Christian Barmore, the interior defensive lineman, who I love.
Think about it.
So the Chargers are going to complete their offensive line overhaul.
Well, let's not go crazy now.
What? It's a pretty good overhaul this year. Let's
Well,
go.
yeah, but it's not. I wouldn't say it's necessarily complete.
So Rashawn Slater would step in as the starting left tackle.
Yes.
Last year, they brought Brian Bulaga in to start at right tackle, and then the entire interior is different this year. Matt Filer at left guard, Corey Lindsley at center, Ode Abushi at right guard. That's 4/5 of the entire offensive line changing, but all with promising players, either 3 of which have played in the NFL, and of course Rashawn Slater. So he's the first or the second tackle off the board, and boom, Rashawn Slater. I like it. Starting left tackle for the Chargers. Giving Justin Herbert some help.
And if that was what they came out of this offseason with, like we've talked before about, hey, look, just let's pump the brakes just a little bit on Justin Herbert because of how that grade was constructed. So much on, insane play under pressure, the very unstable things that you expect to regress year 2. But you could almost offset all of that if you improve the offensive line as much as they have on paper.
Yeah.
So if Justin Herbert goes from being one of the most pressured quarterbacks in the NFL to somewhere in the middle of the pack, that could entirely offset the regression that he has while under pressure. Like you could end up netting exactly even, and Justin Herbert looks exactly as good as he did year 1, even if his play under pressure gets a lot worse because you've reduced the amount of pressure that's going to be on him. Like that, not only is it it's really smart, I guess is the point I'm trying to make.
Yeah, I mean, the idea of creep back toward average, Chargers, I think, have at least done that, especially if they do get Slater in the first round. I think that's one of their most ideal scenarios.
Yep.
Minnesota Vikings at 14. A team that you've been critical of some of their team-building efforts, but when we talk about the defensive line, they signed Dalvin Tomlinson to play 3 technique, a guy that's better as a nose tackle. They have 2 nose tackles essentially now, with Tomlinson and Michael Pierce. I've loved Christian Barmore for them for a while.
But how much does that get screwed up by the fact that they're planning on starting 2 nose tackles?
I don't know. So where would you go here? I mean, I loved Barmore. I think it fits a need, and there's good value there.
I do as well, but I don't think they'll do that to the point where I just...
Do they go edge here?
I think they're going to go offensive line. They need to. I mean, that offensive line is still miserable. It's still bad across the board. It's still Brian O'Neill and friends.
So how are you going to slot this in here? Because O'Neill he's been the starting right tackle. The starting left tackle, depending on, is it Ezra Cleveland, last year's second rounder, who they've moved to guard?
Yes.
Are they moving him back to left tackle, his more natural position, or is it Rashad Hill, who's just struggled throughout most of his career?
I mean, if Ezra Cleveland isn't scheduled to be the starting left tackle, I think you have to write him off as a bad pick immediately because he's not a good guard. Now, I don't think that's his fault. I don't think he's a natural guard. I think he's just been plugged in there to get him on the field because the guards they had were terrible. But if he isn't immediately kicked over to left tackle, what you're saying is in year 2, he's not capable of being better than Rashad Hill, who's not really capable of starting. So that's a catastrophic indictment of that pick.
Here's my big concern here's why I wouldn't take a tackle from the Vikings. Christian Darrisaw is the next best tackle on the board. He's more of a power blocking. I just don't know if he fits their system. He's good. I just don't know if he fits what they like to do from a zone scheme standpoint. Walker Little's after that. I'm not completely with Renner on him as a first-round prospect because of his lack of production throughout his career. I'm not ready to take Walker Little, and I think the rest of the tackle value is at the back end of the first round.
Yeah.
So I don't love it for the Vikings.
I don't love it either, but they made a mess of it when they
But we don't
signed
have
a nose tackle to play 3 tech.
I'm not forcing a need here, Sam.
The Vikings need to overhaul their offensive line. They had the same need that the Chargers did, except instead of like going hard and fixing it, they've done almost nothing.
I'm not reaching for needs. You're not letting me, as the GM here, reach for needs. I'm taking the best players, and here's the deal. By the way, Jalen Waddle would be interesting if you knew they were going to use receivers. I'm just saying.
Won't.
What if we just go Barmore and we say, look, we'll get out of Pierce's contract in a year. We'll put Tomlinson. We're gonna right the wrongs in a year.
Look, I think at some point you just need to hit offensive linemen and keep swinging, keep going.
There'll be second round offensive linemen that are as good as the first round offensive linemen.
Will there though?
What about Jason Owe? as the next Donnell Hunter, who maybe lacked a little bit of college production, but is a freak athlete off the edge.
I don't love anywhere the Vikings can go on this first round pick.
Do we have a trade up candidate? Is anybody willing to trade up?
Yeah,
we need more picks.
Anyone want to get up? No, not really. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think Barmore makes the most sense, but I
Which
think,
tackle do you want? You want Darisaw?
Yeah,
You want the next guy on the board?
Probably.
We'll make it work.
I mean, alternatively, you could take a guy like Vera Tucker and say interior is our biggest need as well. Okay, it's a bit of a reach, but he gets some sort of position versatility. It's a big area of need.
Oh, my gosh.
Let's just fix it and move
Can't
on.
believe you're dragging me into a war room where we're going to take
Look, again,
somebody
it's
in the 20s
the mistakes
at 14.
The mistakes were already made. The mistake was long in the past. Now
You
we're just
don't
trying to make the
compound
best of it.
mistakes by more mistakes.
Why?
You
It's not
continue to pick the
necessarily-
best players, and your roster will get better over
It's
time.
not necessarily a mistake. It's only a mistake if we screw up the eval.
Michael
and it's
Pierce
worth
is
it.
not keeping me from Christian Barmore, Sam. I want Barmore on this team.
Yeah, but
we'll figure it
wouldn't-
out.
It wouldn't if you had like a good roster without holes elsewhere, but you don't.
No, you're
need-
going against every one of my draft axioms,
You're
which is
already
don't draft
behind
for
the eight
need.
ball.
Don't let any current players on your team keep you from good players in the draft. You're keeping me from all of my axioms here with
You're
the Vikings.
already behind the eight ball, needing to fix like 5 other positions. So you need to start fixing one of them. There's no point in just taking another guy that's good who doesn't fix anything.
This is why you're running social media when I'm a GM and you're not in the war room,
Okay.
because you would panic.
It's not panicking. I'm just
Take
you're
the
gonna
best
pick,
players.
You're going to pick a guy that will like come good in a year's time where the team will still suck because you haven't
That's
fixed any of the
you
holes.
don't draft for 2021. You draft for the next 4 or 5 years.
Okay, but now in the meantime, you haven't fixed any of the glaring holes on this roster.
There's more than one round to fix holes.
All right. Who are you going to fix it with?
A second-round tackle instead of a first-round tackle,
Right. Okay.
because the value's similar.
Right. Where did
I want Barmore. Do we have a vote here in the YouTube channel? How about some votes?
some votes? I don't think we have time for that kind of thing.
Jalen Waddle over Barmore.
Just by the way,
Somebody said.
the last time you tried to fix it with a second-round offensive lineman is the guy that
Ezra
we just
Cleveland.
plugged in at guard and might not be able to play tackle, and we have to write off after a year. So maybe just stop screwing around and take the guy in the first round.
Who do you want for the Vikings?
Pick an
After all
offensive
that.
lineman. I don't care. Just address the offensive line.
This is just a brutal way to draft, Sam. It is just brutal.
I'm telling you, the mistakes have already been made. I'm just trying to plug holes in the
they're
side
not
of the boat
that
here.
bad. That is just ridiculous.
They're not that. Have you looked at their offensive line? Their
Darisaw.
offensive line right now on paper is Rashad Hill at left tackle, Dakota Dozier, who they brought back, Garrett Bradbury, who's been a train wreck of a first-round center, Ezra Cleveland, who's only there because we need to get him on the field, and the alternative was Drew Samia, who's the worst guard in the NFL, and Brian O'Neill, who's a good right tackle. So you have 4 out of 5 spots on your offensive line that are like major, major holes. And your solution after free agency where you did nothing to fix it is draft a defensive tackle where you already have 2 of them.
You want Vera Tucker?
I want an
the
offensive
interior.
lineman. I will allow you to pick which one. I'm just saying if the name on that board is of a position that does not play the offensive line, I'm going to start throwing things at TVs in the war room.
All right, let's go Darisaw. Offensive tackle, Virginia Tech. I don't know if he's a perfect scheme fit, but he's still a better pass protector than what we have.
Yes.
So pass protection's most important. All right, Christian Darisaw tackle to the Minnesota Vikings after much debate and Sam panicking. New England Patriots are on the board at 15. This is Waddle.
This is
Speed.
Waddle.
They need speed.
Okay.
Even though they brought in Nelson Aguilar and Kendrick Bourne at receiver.
Yeah.
Jalen Waddle's the play here for the Patriots.
Even though they're about to run this 2 tight end offense into the ground.
Yeah. Because you can.
What is your personnel group now? It's 2 tight ends.
You have more than one. You have 2 tight. You're going to 11 and 12 personnel.
Yeah, but you just made each of them the 3rd highest paid tight end in the NFL. You're going to run that a lot.
That's fine. You're going to create mismatches. You're going to keep defenses off balance. And I don't even Aguilar is the one guy that actually brought speed to the table that they brought in. I want more speed on this offense. They're still one of the slowest offenses in the league.
Still?
Where else would you go if you're New England?
I mean, I think they can look defense.
Is this a J.C. Horn play?
Could be.
Stephon Gilmore.
They're one of the few teams that I think he actually naturally fits.
So you think press man, coverage guy,
Yes.
he'll fit their scheme?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he's just a press man guy. I mean, I think he's got that tenacity and Man, I would be interested to see what Belichick gets out of him. So the payoff of a J.C. Horn, who eventually becomes your top cornerback within a year or two, and the payoff versus a Jalen Waddle in a crowded wide receiver tight end room.
We don't know exactly what he is in terms of like versatility and where he can play and all those kinds of things.
I can be talked into J.C. Horn.
He also, Waddle also brings punt return skills, replace Edelman once he's done with that.
Well, I'm going to be tempted to give Waddle to the Cardinals.
Gunner.
Speaking of speed for the next on the next pick there. All right, let's go J.C. Horn to the Patriots. J.C. Horn, cornerback from South Carolina, going to the New England Patriots at 15. It's some Stephon Gilmore insurance, and it's a bit of a longer-term play. And the idea that you can never have too many corners, even if J.C. Jackson and Stephon Gilmore and Jonathan Jones are there, you literally cannot have too many corners, either for this year or for the future. Appreciate everybody that's tuning in live here on YouTube. Again, be sure to hit that subscribe button. All sorts of great stuff on the PFF YouTube channel, including the PFF Draft Show. I don't know where it's going to be shown, but maybe on YouTube and maybe everywhere, maybe all over the place. So be sure to hit that subscribe button while you are here watching on the YouTube channel. Arizona Cardinals at 16. I want a deep threat in this offense. Mm-hmm. You like Waddle for this? As this fit here?
Yeah, I don't hate it. I'm with you. I think they need that skill set in the offense. You could argue that they already have it in Andy Isabella, but either they don't know it or he isn't it. So let's go with the guy they think is a surer thing in Jalen Waddle. So that would give you DeAndre Hopkins, Christian Kirk, A.J. Green, and Jalen Waddle.
Because you're talking about fixing mistakes. A.J. Green
is a mistake already.
I'm just saying it's not a terrible mistake. I don't think you're going to get a ton of value out of him.
Well, critically, all you're doing is replacing Larry Fitzgerald. So all you're doing is going from one like old, solid-handed guy who can't get open to another one.
Yes.
So it shouldn't be making things dramatically worse, but it's not helping.
But Waddle becomes your Will Fuller complement to DeAndre Hopkins like they had with Houston. That is tough to defend. So I like that. Deep threat. Open up Kyler Murray throwing the ball down the field more. Jalen Waddle, the last top 10 player off the PFF draft board, is gone now. So just to reset the last few picks here, while you go check out our draft board and see who you might like for the Raiders at 17, Sam. Detroit Lions at 9, take Penei Sewell. Dallas Cowboys at 10, take Patrick Surtain, 2. New York Giants at 11, take linebacker Micah Parsons from Penn State. The Philadelphia Eagles at 12, take Kwity Paye, the edge defender from Michigan. Chargers take Rashawn Slater, the tackle from Northwestern. The Vikings take Virginia Tech tackle Christian Darrisaw. New England Patriots at 15 go cornerback J.C. Horn from South Carolina. Arizona Cardinals take wide receiver Jalen Waddle from Alabama. Coming up now, Raiders, Dolphins, football team, and Bears on the clock. Where are we going as the Raiders definitely looking to the defensive side of the ball?
Yeah, you are. I think you could also make a case that they need a right tackle, but they're probably not going to grab that in round one with so many holes on defense. So, yeah, I think you can almost throw a dart anywhere on defense, and it's a pick that would help.
Are they a good fit for Barmore? I know they are.
They are, yeah.
Is that redundant to Maurice Hurst?
No. As much as I like Maurice Hurst, he shouldn't prevent you from drafting a Barmore.
Barmore is I'm a big fan of Christian Barmore from Alabama. I think he's by far the best interior defensive lineman in this class. And I fought hard for him for the Vikings because I thought he was a good fit there and in Las Vegas with the Raiders. So, cornerback, the value is starting to drop a little bit. And I think you've made the point, too, on the PFF NFL Daily. Maybe they feel good about their cornerback situation.
Yeah, I think there's a chance that they believe in the group that they have. They are big corners who fit more naturally in the system that's coming in. I think in particular with Damon Arnett, they can convince themselves, look, this dude barely played as a rookie between injuries and just had like 350 snaps total. Okay, they didn't go well, but let's write off that year and let's have him show what he can do in year 2. That being said, the Raiders are exactly the type of team that would like halt the slide of a guy like Caleb Farley and buy into this like absurd closing speed and just general speed. Like the freaky athleticism that he brings at that size is so Raiders, is it not?
Who's that? Farley?
Yeah. Like that speed, that size to the Raiders. It just like it's exactly the kind of thing that they fall head over heels for.
I'm the GM for every team, as are you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm more tempted by Farley if I'm one of those teams that has 2 first-round picks. It's if I'm the Raiders and if we're talking about a back injury and some risk, it's tougher to take that risk if you only have the 1 first-round pick. Yeah, Farley is I think he's a great fit for almost every team. Absolutely. I think you just figure out how far down the draft are you willing to incur that risk. Mm-hmm. And for me, as the GM of every team, it's easier to do that if I'm the Jets with my second pick or my Jags with my second pick, or the team that's on the clock right now, the Miami Dolphins, despite all of the investment that they've made at cornerback the last couple of years.
So Barmore in for the Raiders.
I would go. Yeah, I would consider Farley. How much would you consider Farley if you're the Raiders?
So I think they will. If this happens, I think that draft room in particular will really be tempted by Caleb Farley. Just the things that they covet: speed, size, physical freakiness. I mean, this was a team that went up and drafted Henry Ruggs as the number 1 wide receiver in last draft at number 11. Farley is like 6'2" and runs a blazing 40 and has the fastest closing speed you're ever going to see from a corner. They're going to look at that as a team without a ton of cornerbacks and go, oh, this is incredible. We need to draft this guy. If he's still available where we are, that's like Christmas. I think I'm with you. I think Barmore is a better pick for them, but I can definitely see that draft room in particular being all over Farley if he falls that far.
Okay, let's go Christian Barmore, interior defensive lineman for the Raiders. Would the Cardinals at 16, with the massive cornerback need, would they be considering Caleb Farley? I mean, I think everybody in this time should be.
Yeah.
A guy we thought was a borderline, top 10 caliber pick. But we don't have the medicals.
Yeah,
we don't have Dr. Monson here.
I think he'll be in the discussion, but I like Waddle for them. I think that makes sense. I think that the 2 teams we've sort of we've gone in another direction. I think they make a lot of sense. So I don't think you can look at any of them and say definitely should have taken Farley.
All right, the Dolphins are the first team to pick a second time here in the first round. They picked Devontae Smith the first time around. And again, just to reiterate, Caleb Farley, a guy that has CB1, cornerback 1 type of skills, but an injury concern. And I think the Dolphins here at 18, the Jaguars at 25, the Jets at 23, Jaguars at 25 should be all in on taking that risk. The one thing I'll say about the Dolphins and the way they've added so much to the secondary in their defense the last couple of years, I think the Dolphins still have more they need more from their edge defenders.
Yep.
And then Jeremiah Owusu-Karamoah from Notre Dame, the linebacker safety hybrid. It's a skill set that they don't have. And we're still talking about a Belichick tree type of defense here. Do you want that linebacker safety type of hybrid who flies around the field, played that overhang role at Notre Dame, played over the slot, doesn't have a defined position, but a linebacker who could play right next to the newly acquired Benardrick McKinney, I think is a very tempting play here for the Dolphins.
Potentially. I think they would definitely be looking edge rusher, though. I mean, this is a team that doesn't really have an edge rusher at all. I mean, Emmanuel Ogbah had a ton of pressure last year, but it wasn't really impact pressure.
Just traded Shaq Lawson.
Yeah, so I really do think that they need someone that can come in and just really rush the passer on a consistent basis to actually maximize the impact those guys in the secondary can make. They just added, Justin Coleman. You can debate how good a fit that is within that system, but he's probably going to be their starting nickel. And then, Igbenogany to try and develop year 2 as well. I think they've got players that they like in that secondary. I think they have to be looking on the edge.
Let's trust the PFF draft board here. Jason Owe, a guy that was a below-average run defender in 2019, improved greatly in 2020. Even though he didn't have any sacks, he still had a very similar pass rush grade in 19 and 20. He's continued to get better. Ran a sub-4.4 40, allegedly, at his pro day. Some of the freakiest workout numbers we've seen. You want to go Jason Owe here?
Owe would make sense. I wonder if they look at home and grab Jalen Phillips, one of the Miami edge rushers, as a local boy, if you like. A guy who has, like we were saying, he's got the sort of profile that if he got one more year of really high-level play, you'd be absolutely in love with him at the top of this draft as well. I wonder if they'd be willing to take the chance that he's got the tool set to be an elite edge rusher.
The question for Phillips is some of the injury concerns. retired from the game in 2018 due to concussions.
That's not ideal.
So that's the same. It's a similar injury risk as Caleb Farley, and so I think both guys are similar as far as the top 15 types of talents. I think people have Jalen Phillips as the number one edge. In this class, in a class that's going to have
another guy with a really good pro day. Has the athletic tools to do it.
Do you want to use the same logic then that I used for the Dolphins? It's their second first rounder, so you could take some chances.
Yeah, I mean, they're a team that can gamble with one of these edge rushers and hope that he pans out.
Let's do it. Jalen Phillips, former 5-star UCLA recruit turned Miami Hurricane, is going to go to the Miami Dolphins. I like it, Sam. Good logic there. Washington football team at 19. I think these picks I hate the most. Football team at 19 and the Bears at 20.
Why is that?
Because they both would rather pick a quarterback.
Sure.
And no matter what you come away with is going to feel just anticlimactic.
I think
I think the football team adding Ryan Fitzpatrick is exciting. For this year.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I think they're happy with their fate. They know they didn't have a shot at a quarterback. Really, they signed the player you sign if you don't really have a shot at a quarterback, which is Ryan Fitzpatrick. And now they're just all in. They're like, all right, let's see what we can do. Let's build this thing around Fitz and let's see what happens. So I'm all for. I think it's not that their signing was exciting. I think that the outlook for them is exciting in a way it isn't for Chicago.
So where are we going with the football team here? They had one of the worst groups of playmakers over the last couple of years now. Terry McLaurin is there, a true number one wide receiver with speed, ability to get open. They add Curtis Samuel. They add Adam Humphries. And then last year we saw some emergence from tight end Logan Thomas. In your boy Antonio Gandy Golden still there? Is the receiver room so crowded that you wouldn't consider a Rashad Bateman at this point in the draft?
No, it's not. I think Bateman is definitely in the conversation for where they would go. They signed William Jackson in free agency, so I think that took care of a lot of the cornerback issues that they had. Linebacker, I think, is a big hole for them.
JOK.
Right, so they're potentially in that market. That's probably the two for me, right? You could make a case that they're in the offensive line conversation as well. You could always get a little bit better up there, and that will always help Fitzmagic. But those are your three areas, right? Do you take a Rashad Bateman? Do you take a linebacker? Or do you take offensive line?
I think a tackle is definitely in play there. Jerron Christian or Cornelius Lucas scheduled as the starting left tackles. Morgan Moses getting older, but the starting right tackle. So a forward-looking approach, I think you would look at tackle. Immediate need, you look at linebacker, and then just add more depth and make receiving room more of a strength. I think you're looking at Bateman. You know me and adding more receivers to the mix. I love it.
Always.
And I think the payoff with Bateman could be huge. And you just say, look, go beat out Adam Humphries. And it's Bateman on the outside. It's Terry McLaurin on the outside. It's Curtis Samuel and Antonio Gibson playing receiver, running back hybrids and all that stuff. I think that's a great way to play football.
And I think it fits with the idea
Let's do it.
It fits with Fitz. It fits with the idea of, look, Ryan Fitzpatrick is our quarterback. We know that that's a limitation, but let's surround him with as much as humanly possible to maximize what we're going to get out of him. So let's give him a receiver that can go make plays. I like it.
The fourth receiver is off the board. Rashad Bateman out of Minnesota is going to the Washington football team at number 19. And my axiom of, Adam Humphries or Curtis Samuel's not going to keep me from drafting a really good football player at a similar position. And that's Rashad Bateman, even though he's 2 inches shorter than we thought he was.
And like 10 pounds lighter.
Yeah, 20 pounds really. Makes me really sad. Maybe we should have dropped him. Time to drop him off the board.
No,
he's got good releases, and he's just solid at everything. I think Bateman's an excellent complement to Terry McLaurin. We've got, 12 more picks?
Yeah.
Rashad Bateman to the football team. Chicago Bears at number 20.
Now's where it gets depressing.
I'm a little sad. Yeah, you don't get a quarterback.
No.
Tackle's a need. I think secondary always can use some addressing. Receiver needs some help beyond Allen Robinson. You have Darnell Mooney there, but again, I'm always trying to get 3 deep, and Anthony Miller's on the trading block there. Where are we going as the Chicago Bears, man?
I think you're picking an offensive lineman, and it's just like the least exciting offseason in the history of the world if you're the Bears.
That's the thing. Like Jermaine Ifedi, currently, between him and Elijah Wilkinson, one of them's going to start at right tackle. I imagine they would try to keep Ifedi in at guard and keep Elijah Wilkinson at tackle. But he's had a couple good games in his career or whatever, but hasn't really played all that well overall. Tackle is a need for the Bears.
Yeah.
Definitely not grabbing another tight end.
It's not exciting, but it's that's what you're left with.
They spent a ton of money on Robert Quinn as an edge opposite Khalil Mack. Mm-hmm. So edge value is decent there, but you're looking at a spot that already has Mack and Quinn.
Yeah, I mean, you could roll the dice at corner as well. Desmond Trufant. It's been a while since we've seen him play well. Like Artie Burns has come in. Outside of Jalen Johnson, they don't have much. I could definitely see the argument that they're the team again that jumps on stopping Caleb Farley's slide, but it's not going to be tremendously exciting if you're Chicago.
The other one could be safety Trevon Moehrig, a guy that I'm not saying he's a direct comp. He reminded me a little bit of Harrison Smith in how he patrols the middle of the field and plays too high, could play single high, can do a little bit of everything. You lose Tayshaun Gibson, Eddie Jackson still there. What about a safety here? As continuing a safety or a tackle, the really unexciting offseason here for the Bears.
Yeah, I mean,
What about Moehrig?
Sure. If I'm the GM of Chicago, I'm just sad. I just want this to be over as fast as possible. Just make the pick and move on. I don't want to hear it.
Come on.
No, I'm bummed. It's just bad.
You're bummed about just about Andy Dalton being your starter?
Just everything. Like
without a great roster around him?
We had designs on this offseason being amazing, bringing in Russell Wilson, making this run to the postseason. Now I've got Andy Dalton, and I just drafted a safety in the first round. I'm just sad.
Can you check our draft board really quick? I'm pretty sure top 10, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. The top 17, 18 players are off the board. That leaves Owusu Karamara as the top remaining player on the draft board. Greg Newsome, your boy Elijah Moore, and Greg Newsome, the next guys.
My boy Elijah.
Your boy Elijah Moore. The next few guys coming off the board. All right, the Indianapolis Colts at 21. The play has always been offensive tackle here, right? We want that starting left tackle opposite Quentin Nelson, or next to Quentin Nelson. At the same time, Colts are another team that's in the wide receiver market. I don't know if the value's there at receiver, though, so that's pushing me toward this tackle discussion.
Right, well, this is why it's a risky move for the Colts to sort of play it like this and roll into the draft with this kind of need, because if the board unfolds like this, you're like, well, how confident are we in Walker Little or another one of these tackles in the 20s being a starter day one and being good? Because, again, it's not like we're a team that needs not just the guy to come in and start, but he needs to be good enough that it's not a problem for Carson Wentz, who needs to be pieced back together as a starting quarterback. So I don't know that they're going to love the answer to that. I think they love to be sitting there and a Rashawn Slater or a Christian Darrisaw having fallen to them. But if that doesn't happen, which is more likely than not, I would say, this is not an easy spot for them.
There's another option at play here, and if you read Ben Lindsay's article on the most, the worst position groups in the NFL currently going into the draft, plus listen to today's PFF NFL Daily where we break down some of them. One of the position groups Ben listed is the Colts edge defenders, Tyquan Lewis and Isaac Rochelle and Kaboko Tarai, like guys who have just either not necessarily played great or just have played great in just, smaller sample sizes, whatever it might be. Do they go edge here? And Jason Owe really fits what they love to do defensively.
Yeah.
Adding athletes and, guys that they can develop.
Freaky athletes as well.
Right. I think as much as I really wanted to lock in a tackle or a receiver for the Colts here, I think Owe, the way this board is falling, might be the play here.
Yeah, and they might, if they've been willing to play it as patient as they have so far, maybe they're willing to do it again in terms of round 1 to round 2 with those tackles and come back for, a Tevin Jenkins or an Alex Leatherwood or somebody like that in the second round and think that the difference between those guys and Walker Little is not big, so let's go there.
And I know that our GM room with the Colts is going to be calling Russell Okung or Alejandro Villanueva at some point.
Yes.
We're going to be grabbing one of those veterans.
Particularly like as soon as essentially Darrisaw is off the board, I'm like, hey, Russell, you still, what kind of interest have you had over the last few days?
Yeah, that's great. So let's do that. Let's go Jason Owe, edge to the Indianapolis Colts, and we add another athlete to that defensive side of the ball. Fellow AFC South team, Tennessee Titans at number 22. Now, my concerns with the Titans is the way the wide receiver room has fallen apart a little bit. And then, cornerback, even though they added Janoris Jenkins to the mix here this offseason, a lot of pressure on Christian Fulton, last year's second rounder. I always like grabbing another corner. As much as I'm trying to like mentally just make Caleb Farley go to a team like the Jets or the Jags, are we thinking about Farley here?
Yeah, I think they're definitely thinking about him. I think they also have to think seriously about what they lost on the offensive side in terms of playmakers. Their number 2 receiver in Corey Davis, their number 1 tight end in Jonnu Smith, both out of the door. Now it's A.J. Brown. They bring in Josh Reynolds. I don't know how much that's going to help. It's the guys that were making the plays last year in those big games, but now they're all you have.
Yeah.
Like now it's how far is Derrick Henry and A.J. Brown alone going to carry you and Ryan Tannehill?
Well, I mean, just to quote the great philosophizer, Sam Monson, you could take any second-round pick and find a Corey Davis.
I think that's probably true.
So the Titans could grab maybe a Terrace. Let's see if Terrace Marshall ends up in the first round. But is he available in the second? Maybe not where they're picking. But there are second-round wide receivers to be had there.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's value at tight end right now if you're the Titans at the back end of the first. I think beyond Kyle Pitts, it's a bit of a stretch to grab another first-round tight end here in this class. Tackle is a major question mark at right tackle. So that could be the play for the Titans. I think it's between the safe play, kind of safe. I'm not even going to say it. I'm not an NFL team. The unexciting, just grab the tackle play.
Yeah, they made a really safe pick the last time they grabbed a tackle.
And I like Oklahoma State kid here for that.
Tevin Jenkins.
Yeah, I like him for the Titans here. He will maul some people in the run game. I think that fits with if they're going to run the ball as much as they like to. I think Tevin Jenkins might be the play, even though he's lower than a couple other guys on the PFF draft board. I think Tevin Jenkins is a good fit for the Titans. My debate would be Jenkins versus the Caleb Farley risk.
Yeah.
You decide.
Me decide? I mean, they muddled through without offensive tackles last year when they really needed one. So let's give him Caleb Farley. Let's give him the upside.
What about the Jets? The Jets were going to take him the next pick.
That's the way the draft.
My Jets were going to take him the next pick.
It's the way it goes sometimes, Steven.
I keep saying the Titans were the team that took a chance on Jeffrey Simmons a couple years ago.
Yeah.
And I think that has paid off. A guy that was top 10 caliber player, coming off an injury.
And he was actually injured, not just
he was actually injured,
not just sort of coming off an injury, ready to go by training camp, which is what Farley's supposed to be. Okay, it's a more concerning injury, but like he had torn his ACL and was going to be missing in theory for the entire first year. This was a much bigger injury, not a risk, but like a much more acute injury problem than Caleb Farley's.
De'Ami Brown for the Titans in the second round, somebody said. He didn't say second round. He just said De'Ami Brown, the UNC receiver for the Titans. Maybe he wanted him in the first round. Oh, he wants him in the first round. Okay, forget it.
That's not
we're going to play the board and maybe get Brown in the second round. We're going to grab Caleb Farley here in the first round, try to hit home runs. The New York Jets are very sad that Caleb Farley is off the board. The Jets grabbed Zach Wilson with their first pick. Are they – now, look, I like Tevin Jenkins better than – I think him and Dalen Rayduns I like better than Walker Little, despite what Renner has on the board here. Mm-hmm. Do the Jets grab a tackle to protect Zach Wilson to start at right tackle?
They could. On the other hand, are they in this boat of like sunk cost of, hey, George Fant, we're paying him some decent money.
I'm not playing this. No, I'm the Jets GM here. I'm not playing the sunk cost game.
But the game to play is like we have one of the worst cornerback groups in the NFL. We have nobody, nothing, and nada, no corners.
That's why I wanted Farley to fall there.
Yeah, well, he didn't. So now you're left with, do you grab a guy like Greg Newsome, whose star is ascending in the post-season world, or Asante Samuel Jr., whose dad beat up this team for years in the same division?
I like Newsome there. So I would debate Newsome versus a starting tackle. Mm-hmm. And I think cornerback is a bigger issue for the Jets.
Yeah.
You like Greg Newsome there? He's number 21.
I would entertain the Asante Samuel conversation as well.
What do you think about Asante and Robert Saleh's defense? Jason Verrett?
Yeah. I mean, so Asante Samuel was a really interesting prospect because it's really lazy to just be like, well, Asante Samuel Jr., how does he compare to Asante Samuel Sr.? But they really are like clones of each other. It's ridiculous. Like down to undersized, not particularly athletic for that size. It's not like either of those guys run a 4.3 flat at 5'10 and 185 or whatever they are. So you're talking undersized, not tremendously elite athleticism, but ridiculous ball skills and quickness of reading things. Asante Samuel has like the fastest, like change of direction T-step, when you backpedal, jab your foot in the ground horizontally and drive off it.
I do.
He has the best one of those I've ever seen. There's no wasted motion. No wasted motion or movement in it. You see at the combine every year, like Deion Sanders sort of coaching them up on how to do this. I think he teaches it differently. He doesn't teach the T-step. He teaches that sort of road runner, feet always moving thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, Asante Samuel just puts his foot in the ground, drives off it, and there's no wasted motion to it at all ever. And it like steals him a couple of yards on those breaks because he's just faster at doing that than the receiver is of breaking on it. So his dad made an entire career out of being this ball hawk and breaking on those out routes and just beating the receiver to the football. I think Junior will do the same thing, but you're like, it really is an outlier. I mean, most players of that profile do not do that. So how much do you sort of lean on the fact that he is a literal clone of his dad who did that for a decade? And how much do you look at it and say, well, that's a real outlier. We probably shouldn't bank on that.
No, I think you could trust the skill set that you've seen from Asante Samuel.
Trust genetics?
Yeah, well, I mean, he plays.
Bloodline scouting?
No, you're judging the way he plays, and it just happens to be the way his dad does, and it's
a bit
of a risk-reward.
But there's other corners that do the same kind of thing, and I think my point is that I think you boost the ceiling of Samuel doing that because you have a direct analog of his dad and how good that can be versus another cornerback who's just like, Jim Franks playing somewhere else who has the same skill set but doesn't have a dad who was a multiple-time Pro Bowler with the exact same skill set. I think having seen it repeat itself 15 years ago, whatever that was, I think you sort of default to the idea that Asante Samuel can be better doing that than you would for a normal guy with that skill set.
Yeah, I mean, this is one I might trust the board a little bit more too. Newsome, he does have he clicks and closes really well as well. Good footwork, better size with Newsome. Pretty good athlete. I think he is a fit for Saleh. I think Newsome's the play here, and I think Samuel's going to come off the board a little bit later.
Look at you defaulting to size. It's disgusting.
What?
You and your freaky
I know what the Jets might want.
6'8" long frame.
I know what the Jets might want.
Oh, look, they're going to go with size.
Greg Newsome. Greg Newsome to the Jets.
Says the big guy.
Greg Newsome to the Jets. He's off the board. I listed the draft board, what our remaining players, or the next few players on the right there. Pittsburgh Steelers. Man, another unexciting spot.
Yeah.
Because their starting left tackle situation is still up for grabs. Do they go left tackle here?
Yeah, probably. Or do they continue the trend of just taking a first-round center and he'll be the Hall of Famer in 15 years?
Landon Dickerson, come on down, future Hall of Famer.
That would be a very Steelers thing.
You would. I could write the line.
Can they even take a center if he isn't the first-round pick? Like,
I would write the line in Peter King's article the next day. The Steelers love Landon Dickerson. They think he's a 10-year starter, and he's going to continue that lineage.
What if it's Creed Humphrey? That's a great name for a center. You got to give him that.
Well, Landon Dickerson was doing cartwheels behind Mac Jones in his interview. I mean, he's got the it factor.
Yeah,
that's why he's number one on our IOL board. I think left tackle for the Steelers right now. They've got whatever. Half his name's cut off on our Okorafor. Sorry.
Beautiful.
Okorafor is the starting tackle, and we need to fix our depth charts over here that cut off his name, and that screwed me up, so I couldn't correct myself. I went to read his name, and it just says Okor ...
Yeah.
And I was like, what's the second half again? Okorafor. Dylan Rayduns, I think. I don't want to take Walker Little. I'm scared of his production. Renner's loving his athleticism, and I don't care. I don't want to be the team that takes Walker Little in the first round.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go Dylan Rayduns.
Okay.
And Tevin Jenkins plays right tackle for Oklahoma State. Doesn't matter. I like to mitigate risk a little bit and not have to flip guys if I don't have to.
Sure.
That's all. So I'm going to take offensive tackle Dylan Rayduns from North Dakota State for the Pittsburgh Steelers. We are We're actually going to do that together.
Collectively.
I don't know if the other – I mean, would you consider Asante Samuel there, Steelers defense? I mean, I like Samuel with his eyes on the maybe I have to rethink that.
He's a fairly natural replacement for Joe Hayden down the line.
Let's do that.
I don't hate it.
Samuel, when I watch him play, I'm like zone coverage, eyes on the quarterback, and I think the Steelers are a really good fit.
Okay.
Let's do that.
Wow,
Asante Samuel.
That changed fast.
Yeah.
I'll look cornerback run.
Wow, 3 corners in a row. Let's reset the board just a little bit. Raiders took Christian Barmore at 17. Dolphins took Jalen Phillips, the edge, out of Miami. Washington football team, wide receiver Rashad Bateman at 19. 20 was the Bears, safety Trevon Moehrig. Colts at 21 took Jason Owe out of Penn State, the edge. And then 3 corners in a row, the Titans, Jets, and Steelers take Caleb Farley, Greg Newsome, and Asante Samuel. We have 8 picks remaining in the PFF NFL podcast mock draft. Maybe we'll get this done in under 2 hours. We shall see. But over 1,300 people are here watching us live here on YouTube. We appreciate everybody tuning in, whether you're listening through the podcast or live here on YouTube. Be sure to hit that subscribe button if you have not already, because this is where we show all of our podcasts, and we're going live all the time, and the feedback has been great. So we appreciate everybody tuning in. Jacksonville Jaguars are on the clock at number 25.
They are.
What do you think here, man?
They can go in a lot of different ways. I think they're in a pretty good spot. This draft has unfolded quite nicely for Jacksonville. Obviously, they get Trevor Lawrence, the no-brainer slam dunk at the top of the draft, but now they've got their choice. They can go a decent number of places, none of which I think are necessarily bad. I would default defense because I think that defense is still fairly well unproven. They've got a lot of sort of high draft picks invested in it, but none of them I think that should necessarily be preventing you from attacking it again. I mean, you just need to keep swinging until somebody shows something.
Before free agency, I looked at this spot for the Jaguars and said, man, if they get Trevor Lawrence and then they add a Rondale Moore at this point and add him to Urban Meyer's defense. Now, this was pre-free agency.
Offense.
To his offense.
Yeah.
Pre-free agency, they added Marvin Jones. They have DJ Chark. They have Laviska Shenault. That's a nice trio. I really like it. I think there's 3 different skill sets there. You know me, build a basketball team, various skill sets. Rondale is as unique as it gets as a skill set. Mm-hmm. And it's a different one than Elijah Moore, who we do have higher on the board, but you like Rondale better than Elijah, I think, right? Would you squeeze a Rondale Moore in here? Or is the defensive needs just so much that we can't play that game just yet?
I'd be with you that if you're going to do that, it's one of the teams with 2 picks. It's a team that can say, all right, we're not like in luxury pick territory, but it's a gamble. Taking a Rondale Moore in the first round is a gamble because his role in college was so absurdly narrow and specific and gimmick and contrived that you either have to have that role entirely built for him in the NFL, i.e. you need to come into this with a plan, like the Tavon Austin pick, right? The Rams drafted him with no plan whatsoever what to do with him, and that guy spent his entire career without a role in the NFL other than the jet sweep guy. So if you're going to draft Rondale Moore, you either need that entire plan on how to deal with him, or you need to be confident that his role can be scaled up to a much more NFL-centric thing. And I think if you're going to do that, having essentially a second first-round pick to play with is the move. Because, all right, if we don't get it, who cares? We still have Trevor Lawrence. It's okay.
Right.
But if that's your only first-round pick, I think that's a hell of a gamble to pull on a guy like him. So basically my point is, if you're going to do it, now's the time.
So Rondale Moore, I think, is in play in our war room here. The other thing I would say is they franchised Cam Robinson.
Yep.
And so they only get 1 more year of Cam Robinson. Do you grab a tackle for the future? Mm-hmm. Also, Jawan Taylor has not been great at right tackle. I think that's in play. And I think you mentioned defense. I think I know the top defensive remaining player on our board, Jeremiah Owusu-Karamoah. JOK for the rest of the show here. JOK is there, and he could play next to Miles Jack, adding a ton of athleticism to that linebacking core.
Yeah.
Miles Jack and Joe Schobert. And now you're just talking about movable chess pieces on the defensive side of the ball.
And I wouldn't rule out Azeez Ojulari either. I know they've
Another
got
edge.
First-round picks invested in the edge again and again, but none of them have yet shown up. None of them have shown the kind of impact pass rush that you actually need at some point from these first-round picks. So just the fact that you've taken edges in the first round for a couple of years shouldn't necessarily prevent you from doing it again.
Elijah Vera Tucker, another guy, could play some guard, kick inside, play tackle. What do you think? I am tempted by tackle of the future, Dylan Raydun's here, who I wanted to give to the Steelers the previous pick.
I liked your argument. I was sold on your Rondell argument. If you're going to get
sold
that
on
done,
it?
If you're going to get that done
All
in
right.
the first round, do it here.
All right, let's do it. Rondell Moore's in the first round in our draft.
Nice.
Rondell Moore to the Jacksonville Jaguars. And how are we going to use him? All over the place. All over the place. He's going to keep defenses up at night, as is Laviska Shenault. DJ Chark, deep threat. Marvin Jones, possession receiver, giving Trevor Lawrence the weapons that he deserves and needs. Cleveland Browns at 26, a team that filled a couple needs in the secondary, which was great in free agency. They come in with one of the most well-balanced rosters in the NFL, Sam. I think the big question is edge. They need somebody rushing the passer opposite Myles Garrett. They could use anything, any help and depth on the defensive line. And then linebacker's a question, but we also don't know if they're just going to use a few more safeties up at linebacker. But, hey, JOK fits for them as well.
Yeah, he does.
I don't know if he JOK lands this low in real life.
Yeah.
But in our draft, he does. I think that's a good move for the Browns.
Do it. I like that pick. I think that
Owusu Koromara.
it's one of those great ones that fills a need and is a good value pick. So make it happen.
All right, good value there. Baltimore Ravens are up at number 27. Any thoughts on the Ravens and where they could potentially go? Another team that has, again, a good roster, interior offensive line. They helped a little bit with Kevin Zeitler. I think they could always use a little bit more there. Receiver is the other one that we've been thinking about, even though they bring in Sammy Watkins to complement Marquise Brown and Miles Boykin. Do you add another player there? What are your thoughts?
I think Sammy Watkins potentially keeps them out of that first-round wide receiver market. I think if they were going to do that, they would have been looking for a guy that could immediately make a discernible difference over a guy like Sammy Watkins. I don't know if the remaining players do, and I don't know that they're a team, I think, that has a limited number of reps to go around snaps to go around from the wide receiver position. So I don't think they're going to be in the market for a guy like Elijah Moore they don't really have that role when they've got a Marquise Brown and a Sammy Watkins already there. So I think they're probably out of that first round wide receiver market. They'll probably keep rolling on or keep hammering picks into that defense.
The other thing I was thinking is, with Orlando Brown potentially wanting a trade, do they look for their right tackle of the future in Tevin Jenkins? And maybe our Ravens war room is trying to grab a first rounder for Orlando Brown. And maybe we're trying to throw that to the Colts a little bit earlier in the draft. But is Tevin Jenkins a natural right tackle at Oklahoma State, mauling run blocker, fits what the Ravens do? Are we willing to take that forward-looking approach?
Possibly. I think they're also potentially a team that could make that, the fabled low first-round center pick. Their interior offensive line was a mess last year. I think they've understood that is a significant problem. Generally, when you're talking about a first-round center, most people usually think it's a reach.
Matt Skura is gone. Patrick McCarry has been a little up and down when he's played.
And nobody, they had multiple players in there last year, and none of them could snap the ball. So if they could just, secure that, it would be an upgrade. So I wonder if they would be in that market of just saying, look, screw it. Let's take a center at the bottom of the first, and let's just lock that up as being done. And they grab a Landon Dickerson.
Landon Dickerson's a first-round caliber center, ACL tear in the SEC title game, has an injury history. Do we want to risk that on our board here? What do you think?
I would. I mean, look, I don't want to say ACLs are routine, but they're not the critical injury thing that they used to be in the past. He has one of my favorite pros in Mike Renner's draft guide of any player.
Oh, yeah? What's that?
Initial pro is built like a fridge. And then not a dorm mini fridge either, industrial size.
That's good. It's always nice when somebody, we've seen this with Lance Zierlein. Once you get into year 3 or 4 of writing a ton of in-depth reports or just writing a lot of words as Renner has, you get creative.
Yeah.
And Renner's done a good job with that. PFF draft guide, go check it out. I can't believe we just dropped Landon Dickerson in there, but I think that's a very Ravens move.
Yeah.
And a potential real one. All right, that's good. Landon Dickerson, starting center to the Baltimore Ravens. We've got 5 picks remaining in the PFF NFL podcast draft. New Orleans Saints are on the clock. Number 28 overall. Corner and receiver are two spots where they've just lost. They lost Emmanuel Sanders. They lost Janoris Jenkins. They've they had to just make some cuts due to salary cap issues.
Yep.
How are we building around Jameis Winston and Taysom Hill? And then just adding more depth on the defensive side of the ball is the big question mark. And the roster's still good. It's still very good, so I think they've got some flexibility here.
I think they're definitely in the wide receiver market. I could see them being a team that would jump on a Terrence Marshall at the bottom of the first round. A guy, it's not a good group of receivers, certainly in the first couple of rounds, for size. Like if you're coveting big receivers that can run, outside of those top guys, you don't have a lot working for you. The guys at the bottom of the first and top of the second are mostly slot style receivers. So if you get this far and the guy, the top of the draft, Jamar Chase, Devontae Smith are long gone, and somebody like Washington has snagged a Rashad Bateman, like Terrence Marshall is the top guy for a while of that style of receiver.
I like that. Terrence Marshall works. It's somebody's laughing at my Jameis Winston and Taysom Hill deal here. It's Tamus. It's Tamus. So Terrence Marshall to help Tamus right down the street from LSU, ran a sub 4.4 allegedly at pro day. I'm just gonna say allegedly at every pro day, yeah. Right? We got a scouts watch. I don't care. We have a 3% decline probably for all of these this year. LSU's Terrence Marshall to play wide receiver opposite Michael Thomas, and it allows Deontay Harris to be that more deep threat, Traquan Smith to be that wide receiver 3 possession type that they are. So Saints add a wide receiver. The Packers at 29 may have wanted that wide receiver, Terrace Marshall. That could have been a really nice fit for them. I think they look tackle here, though. I think the Packers go tackle. And since Mike Renner, was a Green Bay guy, maybe Walker Little. I'll give him.
Well, that's where you want to put him.
If
there?
Walker Little is the top tackle on Renner's board, he gets to go to Green Bay.
If you're so confident in Walker Little, how about he goes play for your team?
Yes, that's my thought, because David Bakhtiari's hurt, and I'm not drafting just because he's been banged up. But the right tackle spot is a need here for the Packers, just replenishing along the offensive line. And as the wide receiver depth has diminished, I think this makes a ton of sense for them.
Yeah, I don't hate that. I think you could throw a dart pretty much anywhere on defense as well and get a position that would help.
So corner, I really wanted to start in corner. They did bring back Kevin King, but I wanted somebody to replace him. I don't know if is the value there on anybody?
We've reached I think a drop-off point of the corner group.
So that keeps me from corner. And then linebacker I would consider. The Packers, this is every year. Yep. Every time you're doing a mock draft, you think about linebackers, the back end of the first for the Packers. They never do it. But Nick Bolton is there and Zaven Collins is there. And there are rumors that Collins is going to go in the top 15.
Yeah, I really like Nick Bolton as well. I think he's one of those linebackers that just jumps off the film, which I think is always a good thing. I wonder if his athleticism isn't as good as some of these other linebackers, but I think he probably offsets that by just being a better, pure, natural linebacker.
So would you consider him there, or do you want to go tackle?
I'd consider, but I'm okay with the tackle pick.
Okay, we're going Walker Little for Renner. We got the Bills, Chiefs, and Bucks left. Buffalo Bills on the board. Do you have any thoughts on this one, Sam?
Well, they're just a running back away, Steve. So this is obviously our first running back spot.
Are there any teams? So we always joke about the running backs, and there's not a whole lot of buzz about running backs going that high this year. Do you think anywhere along the way, like the Dolphins at 18 are probably the team that might take a running back? And then I think it's the Bills here, or it's the Bucs at 32.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly think a couple of the teams at the bottom could. I just don't think they should, or I wouldn't. So, I mean, we can probably spoiler alert that the rest of this first round will not feature a running back.
We're not going to pick running backs.
The GMs.
Bills could go. So Elijah Vera Tucker would help as just far as continuing to shore up that offensive line and helping at guard in particular, but also given that tackle depth, the USC tackle / guard. Do you want more pass rush? Azeez Ojulari could be a guy.
I'd be really tempted for that. He comes in and becomes maybe a Jerry Hughes replacement down the line, a supplement to his pass rush right away. I think that makes a lot of sense stylistically. My
question with him is he does weigh 240, and he's not that the 3-4 outside backer versus 4-3 edge matters a ton, but if you're going to play with your hand on the ground, those guys usually are at least 255, 260. Gregory Rousseau has dropped on our board to number 36. he's more of an upside type of guy. Is Rousseau a potential play here, just given the Bills' depth and trying to hit that quote-unquote upside potentially?
I think he could be. Wasn't Jerry Hughes fairly undersized when he came in? Hasn't he packed on a bit of muscle since his time in the NFL? He's listed at like 255 now, but I seem to remember he was lighter than that when he came into the league.
Yeah, and I like Ojulari. I mean, he was a redshirt sophomore, 90 grade, number 4 edge in the entire nation last year. So number 25 on our draft board. Good value for the Bills. Let's do it. Edge defender Azeez Ojulari is going to the Buffalo Bills.
Now we got Kansas City. This is interesting because of what they've done in the offseason.
Okay. You don't want to take Elijah Moore in the first round.
I don't.
But if you're the Kansas City Chiefs, do
Yes.
you?
No.
You still don't want to.
Correct.
Dylan Ray-Duns is still on the board.
Uh-huh.
The tackle from North Dakota State that I've tried to give to a couple different teams.
Yep.
We think the Chiefs are going to want a tackle in the first round.
Yep.
And the value matches up here.
It does. I think that makes a lot of sense for them. They still don't have a starting left tackle right now. They've overhauled the rest of the offensive line. Joe Thuney with the big money signing at left guard. Austin Blythe comes in to start at center. Kyle Long potentially at right guard, maybe even right tackle. Who knows? Mike Remmers is the contingency plan at right tackle. Plus, last year's third-round pick. They should be okay there, but left tackle, there's no one. Left tackle, they actually need a starter.
All right, just to recap the last few picks while you think about the Bucs, man. This is it feels like a luxury pick with their entire starting unit coming back, right?
Running back away.
New York Jets at 23 pick Greg Newsome. Steelers cornerback Asante Samuel. Jaguars at 25 take Rondale Moore. Browns Jeremiah Owusu-Karamoah at 26. 27 the Ravens take center Landon Dickerson. 28 the Saints take wide receiver Terrace Marshall. Packers take offensive tackle Walker Little. Bills take edge Azeez Ojulari, and the Chiefs at number 31 take offensive tackle Dylan Ray-Duns. That puts the Bucs up on the board, and you have a team that won the Super Bowl, has all of their starters returning. They also have a 44-year-old quarterback next year. Is that what he is? 44-year-old quarterback next year. So they're in this Super Bowl window, obviously, and I think they have the flexibility to just say, okay, where do we need depth, or do we want to start taking a forward-looking approach? They haven't even admitted, hey, they scout guys by saying, where's this guy going to be in 2 years?
Yeah.
And if they're doing that, they're saying, okay, and when Tom Brady maybe retires after 2 years, what's our roster look like? Let's start looking forward there. So they could add, honestly, I think they could add tackle depth, even though they just had Donovan Smith and Tristan Wirfs locked up. More wide receiver depth with Chris Godwin, once again a free agent. More defensive back help, because that's what kind of got them to the Super Bowl, was just taking a whole bunch of stabs at cornerbacks there.
Yeah, they are also a team that I think, so if there is a gap on this team, I think edge rusher is as close as it gets to it, even with Shaq Barrett coming back and JPP there. I think that's so if you stumble into a first round impact player, that's the position where I think he can make the most immediate obvious impact. Is, look, JPP's okay. He's not amazing. Shaq Barrett is good, but even he's not incredible. You could replace some production, spell those guys with an impact pass rusher if you found one. So I think they would be in the edge market. Honestly, I don't like Elijah Moore in the first round, but if he's going to go anywhere, this makes some sense. So
Elijah Moore, huh?
My problem with Elijah Moore in the first round is what we talked about last time, which is, look, the value just isn't there, because you can take if you get a good receiver, regardless of what he played in college, if he can play outside, he can play inside. The same isn't true in reverse. Just because a guy can play well inside doesn't mean he can play outside. I don't know if Elijah Moore can play outside, and there's quite a lot of evidence that says he can't. But the Bucs really don't need him to. And they actually are in a position where they can just take a really good, smaller role player and be comfortable if he lives up to his ceiling, even if that ceiling is lower, because they don't need it to be any higher. So if Elijah Moore comes in and provides that sort of foil, provides what Antonio Brown did last year, right? Which is fourth option on the offense.
Yeah.
But every now and again, if something goes to hell, he gets 8 targets in a game, and he can actually make plays doing that, and he can live within zones, and he's a really good player. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, the other thing is, if you're looking at the Bucs and you're saying, okay, how are we going to win the Super Bowl in 2021 here? You have the roster, but what could go wrong? And if you have injuries at if you have injuries on the interior of the O-line, you probably don't have the depth there. So like Elijah Vera Tucker from USC might be a potential guy there. But your point too, last year they dealt with Mike Evans getting hurt. Antonio Brown had to step in. They dealt with Chris Godwin, losing his hands a little bit in the playoffs. They needed other guys to step up. Scotty Miller was touch and go throughout the year. He'd be a deep threat. He just wouldn't show up for certain games. I think just the wide receiver depth is always crucial, and particularly for the Bucs, we just want to keep it as strong as possible. But it also has a long-term play. If you let Chris Godwin walk in a year, Elijah Moore takes over that slot-heavy role in a vertical offense where he's not a true slot. He's a vertical type of threat, not just like a Wes Welker type of slot. So, all right, I like it. Let's do it. Elijah Vera Tucker. He's the guy. I mean,
I was going to say what?
Elijah Moore.
Elijah Moore.
Elijah and Elijah, but different spellings.
Yes.
Threw me off. I was also trying to read something at the same time.
Well, that's your first mistake.
Elijah Moore goes in the first round. Thank you, finally, Sam. Go check out Sam's article on why you should never draft a first-round slot wide receiver.
Yeah.
Over at PFF.com.
Never do it except right here.
Except in this. Number 32, it's basically a second-round pick. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
It is in years where the Patriots cheat and lose first-rounders. 32 is a second-round pick.
Yeah.
So it's, same thing. So there you have it. It's the PFF NFL podcast mock draft. We just did it on the fly. I think it's great. I think we need to can we get some sort of like social graphic or something? We'll have to tease it out a little bit and let people, click on it and listen to our analysis, because that's where the fun is. It's talking through the picks and going through all the analysis and how we got to our conclusions. Top player left on the board is Tevin Jenkins, a tackle out of Oklahoma State at this point.
Yep.
And then Nick Bolton from Missouri. Go check out the PFF draft board. Don't forget that Underdog Fantasy. Go there, put in $10, promo code PFF, and you get that PFF draft guide for free as part of PFF Edge. Thanks to everybody for tuning in. If you're on the YouTube channel, before you leave, click subscribe. We've got all sorts of great stuff coming up on the YouTube channel over at PFF.com. And, of course, go subscribe to the PFF NFL Daily, where Sam and I get into these topics even more in depth, because 2 hours sometimes just is not enough.
It's not enough.
Thanks to everybody for tuning in. We'll be back on Thursday. More PFF NFL podcast.